This meeting of the Board of Trustees is called to order at 6:04 p.m. We have a quorum with Carlos Bustillos, Richard Cudier, Sotero Ramirez, Cruz Ochoa, Catherine Luceto, Mike Rosales, and myself, Connie Woodruff. Trustee Rosales, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. One and indivisible.
2 moments, silence, please. Thank you.
Dr. Delatorre, do we have any reports this evening?
President Woodruff, members of the board, we are back. It's going to pick up. We've got great momentum, and we've got a number of presentations for you this evening. The first presentation speaks to our Random Acts of Kindness program, district-wide program. If I can ask Dr. Kennedy to please introduce Dr. Morgan. Dr. Morgan will present to the board.
Good evening, President Woodruff, members of the board, and Dr. Delatorre. We have just completed implementing year 1 of Kindness in the Classroom, which is the curriculum that is provided by the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation. Throughout the year, our teachers and our counselors implemented lessons, created activities, presentations, and celebrations, all with one focus in mind, and that was to create a culture of kindness. Surveys were distributed during the fall and spring semester to our students, faculty, and staff, and to our parents. The survey covered perception and awareness on social skills, on kindness, and on safety. Tonight, Dr. Lee Morgan, our researcher from the University of Colorado, who's been working with us since the very beginning, is here to present the findings from the survey. Alongside him, or also with us tonight, we have Martha Garcia, who is our SEL coordinator for the district, and I'm very excited to announce our new Director for Guidance and Counseling, Ms. Selena Munoz. Dr. Morgan.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here this evening to be able to present and talk to you about the Random Acts of Kindness, the Kindness in the Classroom curriculum. Wanted to start off with saying that we want to really focus on school culture and kindness, and that's what we're talking about this evening. But just to lay the foundation is that as a district, that you are demonstrating innovation as a district in not only implementing the program itself, but the way that you're implementing. Most districts will implement either a small group of schools at once, starting off, and then they build up, or they'll implement only at elementary and middle, but you're doing district-wide, which is not what we see around the country. And it is the better way to go, because what you're doing is that you're giving the skills to every student in the district. And that is what our students are needing, are the skills. And I think that not only are you being innovative, but you're showing the value for the program, because you not only do you have, I would say, you have the right program, of course I would say that, but I think you also have the right people in place, like Martha, Selena's just come on, Dr. Kennedy, that have, and your board and your cabinet that have been a great support throughout this year. Martha has been an excellent support in working with us and helping to implement, and then that process of really starting and going throughout the entire district. That way you have a common message for all students and for all staff. And as you'll start to see in the results, that it does make a difference for our students and our staff and for the community. And that's what it's about, saying, how do we make a difference for our students and the district? So with that, 2 things I'm going to start off with is that I'm talking about school culture and then talking about kindness. And that school culture is the idea that students are in a safe learning environment that's conducive to learning for them, that they feel supported by adults. They feel like they are challenged. They have that sense of academic press. So that's the part of the school culture. And then we also have the part of kindness, that culture of kindness, that students feel like the adults are modeling kindness. They're encouraged to be kind, that they are seeing kindness happen in their classrooms and throughout this school. So those are two that we kind of want to focus on. And to start with, I went to look at some of our parent results. And what our parents are saying, so we asked parents questions around these 5 areas, their interactions with the principals, the adult support, the adult respect, perception of safety, and kindness. And what we're seeing here with the data is that by and large, more than half of our parents are saying, so when we see the green, that is what we would say is excellent. When we see the yellow, that's adequate, and red is where they're saying it needs improvement. Most of our parents are saying that when they look at the culture of the district, that is excellent. But we also see that about 2/3 of our parents are saying that it's not consistent as they would like to see. So that is some room for improvement. Data is aggregated across the district. What we're going to start to see here in a moment is that when we break down the data and we look at elementary, middle, and high school, that we see some differences. We have 5 areas that we really looked at for the staff and the students. I'm going to really focus on 3 tonight, and I wanted to have all 5, so you have that in your presentation, but the 3 because they are the ones that are going to really impact the academics. And so we look at the sense of kindness, that kind culture. And what we're seeing, and this, you guys are not alone, we see this across the nation in research, is that high level of kindness for the elementary, but we see a dramatic drop for middle school, and especially for our middle school students, and then another drop at high school. And our goal is, what we want to be able to do is to say, we're going to probably still see a drop from elementary to middle school, but not such a dramatic drop. So we want that yellow, that 59%, to change over and grow that 28%. So that's what we're saying as far as the kindness. And what we're going to see in a few slides from now is that kindness, how it impacts other areas. I'm going to skip academic press for right now and go right to social emotional learning. And that social emotional learning is really about how do students and adults go about learning the processes and the skills to be able to interact with each other. And what I always say is that people don't get fired from jobs because they're incompetent most of the time. They get fired because they don't interact well. It's because we don't like them. And then we say, well, let's get rid of them. These are the skills that we're trying to give to students. How do they interact with each other? And what we're seeing is that, again, although it's more consistent, we still see that slight drop. And we still see a lot of room for improvement to get it from that yellow where our students and our staff are saying it's happening, but it's not consistent, to the point where it's more consistent. And what we'll see is that from a social emotional learning perspective, is that it definitely does matter. They learn the skills in elementary, but it does matter, and we see it impacting academics at a higher degree when we get to the high school years. So that's why that social emotional learning is important. It's about responsible decision making, social awareness, self-awareness, those things of how do we interact as a community. And then the next one I wanted to be able to look at is the sense of safety. And this is highly important for any school district, because when a student feels that they are safe, then they can rest a little bit and they can focus on learning instead of having their attention focus on, is someone going to do something to me? Is someone going to say something that's going to set me off? And what we're seeing is that, again, at the elementary level, more than half of our students are saying that they feel safe. The staff are saying they feel safe, and the parents are saying that they feel safe. But we see that drop off. The other things that we'll notice is that at the elementary level, and this is generally what happens, is that the students feel less safe than the adults and the parents, but the students are closer to the action of what's going on. And the reason why we want these things to be able to match up even closer, so where we have, especially in middle school, where we have this mismatch between what the adults are feeling and what the students are feeling, is because if as an adult I feel like it's really a safe place and the students come to me and reporting like, I'm having this issue, I'm less likely to act quickly, because I'm saying, it's probably not as big a deal as you are, but the students are really sensing that. And I think that goes along with some of your data on bullying that we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that because your students now have the language, they're reporting it and they're getting the help. And so you're going to see the incidences go up initially because students have the language to be able to report and say, hey, this is what's happening. and I want there to be a change. We talked with one of the principals when I did some interviews back in June, and she was saying that the students were calling them out and saying, hey, what you guys are teaching with the random acts of kindness, you guys are not doing it to that level. And she said, I have to think about it and I have to reflect. What am I going to do? And I can talk to the teacher. What are we going to do? So we're seeing that it's having an impact on the students. And then what we're going to do is that we're going to see that the areas of kindness, social emotional learning, and safety are going to impact academics in the district. But before I get there, let me talk a little bit about this sense of kindness in the schools. And we see it at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And this question of kindness happens regularly in my school. And so the green and the blue, overall, the schools are saying great, but what we want to be able to do on this one is to move more of the green into that blue area where they strongly agree that kindness is happening, because that impacts, it has a cascading or a domino effect. And before I move on, a couple of things I wanted to be able to mention is just to make sure you guys are very clear that this is based on your data from the surveys that we have taken from your parents, from your staff. So with parents, we surveyed and got back 5,172 surveys from parents, which represents about 10,000 kids. What we looked at, we've got about 1,200 surveys back from teachers and 12,000 surveys back from students. And so between about 30% of our overall students across the board. And so 5,000 from secondary and 7,000 from elementary. And this is your data, so we were able to put your data from the surveys and do the statistical analysis with the end of course data like algebra and the STAR data. So what we found when we look at that is that kindness has a positive impact on a student's sense of social emotional learning, what they're experiencing at school. And it's between 10 and 13%, that if I can go up from needs improvement to I see where it is adequate, that it's going to improve my score on social emotional learning by 10 to 13%. And again, that social emotional learning also improves when students are saying that I feel safe at, that I'm able to manage my emotions, that students are thinking before they get angry, and that's those ideas of social emotional learning. What we're seeing is happening is that impacts their perception of safety at school. And that's, again, between 10 to 12%. And then what we see happening is that when students are feeling safe, that is having a positive impact on their STAR scores and the end of course scores. So we're seeing between 2%, and then at the high school, we're seeing 2.8% and 1.3%. So at the end of course English, the prediction is that if you go from an adequate safety to excellent feeling of safety, that's going to bump your score by 144 points. For third grader, if you do the same thing, it's going to bump your score by 30 points. So that's why we're seeing what's happening is that we see from kindness to social emotional learning to safety to our academics. And with that, we didn't want to just stop there. We wanted to be able to say, okay, so we have all this great data, but where's the rubber meet the road? And so we asked the teachers, are you seeing the students actually doing acts of kindness, and do you perceive that they're doing it? And so if you look at the blue and the green, you're looking at about 90% or 80% of the teachers are saying, yes, I see them doing acts of kindness in the community. Yes, I see it happening in the schools. So those are very strong indicators of what's happening at the school within year one that says that we'll continue to grow. With that, we also asked, do you feel like that this is appropriate? And when we looked by level, so elementary, middle, and high, we only had 3% that said, no, it's not appropriate at each level. But our elementary, middle, and high, the majority of the teachers feel like this is an appropriate curriculum for the students that I work with. So that's a very strong thing, because when the teachers feel like that is an appropriate curriculum, they're going to implement it at a higher level. And that's what we want to be able to look at. And so then the last part of this is looking at those next steps. And I'll go over this really quickly. The couple of things is just going to be continued fidelity of implementation. the training for teachers so that they have that sense of self-care. How do they implement it across the curriculum? This is a picture from Indian Ridge Middle School, where they have social studies integration. They said the 50 states of kindness, and so they had a kindness quote that began with, so if it's Colorado, it starts with a C. If it's Texas, it starts with a T. So those are the things that we want to be able to see, and this is outside of what the curriculum says to do. They're taking it to the next step. And the reason why is because we see here is that about 25% of our teachers are saying that they're not really implementing it at this point, which is okay for the first year. So we just want to up that number. We have also about 25% that they say they are. So what we want to be able to do is grow from this year to next year to say that, you know, from instead of saying 25%, they're doing an excellent job of implementing. We want to grow to 40% and keep going by year till we get to the sustainability. The next thing is that you guys are doing an excellent job with that sense of accountability and measuring, but we need to get a greater number of participants. So you can look here and we see by learning community, and we also see by level with students and with staff. So our numbers overall, I'm confident in the numbers, but I'm the least confident with high school. If you look at about 6.9% of our high school students participate in the survey. So we want to be able to up those numbers so that we get a true representation of what are the high schools really telling us, the high school students telling us, so that we know how to intervene. And then the last thing is, I would say, is that what we want to be able to do is that all schools have reports on the data that's specific to their school. So to use those reports to be able to celebrate what's been happening in their schools over the first year of implementation, and also to say, what do we need to change? And say, hey, this number is not where I really want it to be. What do I change in order to make it better for next year, understanding that making it better means that it's going to be better for students, and the culture of kindness is going to change for students, and the social emotional learning that they're using is going to change, their sense of safety is going to change, and then we're going to see ultimately continued academic improvement. So with that, again, thank you for the time. You guys are, for Random Acts of Kindness, you are a special district, your first district to go district-wide. So they've had several districts that have gone here and there. You guys have a level of commitment that the folks from the national level that are doing the major research, we say, this is what we need to change for students, because we've gotten so far, but this is our next lever, is to be able to have that change for students, and you guys are doing it. So I really appreciate, personally, I appreciate what you guys are doing for the students here. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
So on the data size of the people that responded, the high school is low, is what you're saying?
Yes.
And what about the elementary and the middle school areas? Were they good, and the parents? So were they good sizes of representation or not?
So with our elementary, we had about 27% of our elementary students and 12% of our elementary staff in the spring. With the parents, it's hard to say, because I don't have a percentage that says this is how many parents that should have participated. So I think that with our parents, because we did it the one time in the year, it is a good start, and then we want to get more representation, because the schools that we did get surveys from the parents, they were very strong. We just had some schools that we didn't get as many, so we don't really know for those individual schools. But I think that what we're seeing as far as the middle was very strong in participation. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. That if we can continue to up those numbers, because generally you would really want 50% participation to really be able to say that these are solid numbers.
I think what would be helpful to them would be the actual number. So for example, if I'm talking about students at the high school, we've got approximately 12,000 students, right?
Yes.
10% would be 1,200 participated.
Yes.
5% would mean 650 participated.
Yes, you're correct.
So according to this, you had, out of 12,000 students at the high school, you've had 700 students participate.
That is correct. And one of the things that I think that we will, that we're doing for next year is that this survey was done in May after testing. So we'll move it up to March, and we feel like that's a better testing window to kind of, because when students are thinking about graduation schools, it's just harder at that window. So by moving it up to March, we feel like that these numbers will go up automatically, but we still want to have that push to say, how do we make sure that we're getting these numbers up?
In addition to the qualitative piece, the survey piece, do you look at critical incidents report for each of the high schools? Did bullying go down? Did assaults go down? Did drug incidents go down? Does that play into any of this?
So I haven't had access to that as of yet. That's something that we can definitely look at and say by school and look at the correlation and say, is it going down? Generally, we would expect, and from talking with the high schools, the different high school principals I've talked to, they feel like it's going down. I also want to look at the numbers and say, is it actually going down from
Right.
last year to this year?
Yeah, it's qualitative. You know, it's good that we feel
Right. but we
that
don't
it's
see the-
going down, but quantitative data, statistics, those type of things speak incredibly loud, right? And so maybe a year from now, we can take a look at actual numbers of people that have participated, because what we're hearing is that among faculty and staff, that many of them feel like it's a significant burden and an additional responsibility in the class. And if we can demonstrate to them that it's having a positive impact, then I think they'd be more open to it. And it's certainly something we want to support and we want to promote in our schools. And all of this is incredibly important to create an environment that's conducive to learning. But we've all grown up in a world where you can tell me about it and I can feel a certain way about it. But in this age of accountability,
Right.
we need numbers.
Yes, so and that's why I've been working with your data folks to be able to get that data, to be able to say, let's connect that data with the survey data and what we're getting from the schools to be able to say, are we seeing a statistical difference? So when we run this stuff on testing impact, that's looking at statistical difference and saying, you know, is there an actual difference, or do we just kind of fill it, or does it just move a little bit, or is it an actual difference?
But these numbers are also based on the percentage of students that participate in the survey, right?
That is correct.
So if at the third grade you've got, 222 students that participate in the survey, while it looks like, well, and I'm sure there is a correlation and association between feeling safe and secure. The other question I would ask is, when the students are being asked if they feel safe and they feel they're in an environment with kindness, are they sure that they're speaking strictly about the time that they spend in our schools, or do they just sort of aggregate that and assume that we're talking about in their life?
So what we do is, on each of these constructs, is that we ask them several questions about that. So about feeling safe, there are about 5 or 6 questions that they get asked. Do I feel safe in my classroom? Do I feel safe in school? Do I feel safe walking to and from school? Do I feel safe in the bathroom? So we ask them those specific questions and we put it together. Because the one question, so is specific to the school environment.
School environment.
Yeah, so all of these are going to be specific to the school environment.
Okay.
And because the one question wouldn't really get at it, so that's why we always ask them several questions, and allows us to be able to see that difference.
Yeah, I just didn't want them to be overwhelmed with what's happening in their life in general and sort of apply it to, do you feel safe? So that's one way of doing it, by asking them a number of questions that are specific to experiences that they have while they are on our campus or on their way to school or home from school.
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Ramirez, you have a question?
Yes. Dr. Morgan, reference the slide on fidelity. Do you gather any demographic information on those folks that are responding to that, such as, how many years they've been teaching and that sort of thing?
So, yes, we do ask them the number of years of experience of teaching, and we don't ask them the number of years of experience in the district, but we ask them about their level of education to kind of be able to see, is there a difference based on the number of years in teaching?
And also, too, along with that, is there a opportunity to provide comments, any type of written comments about
Yes.
the obstacles to adopting this, or just applying it on a regular basis?
Yes. So they have, with all 3 surveys, they have with the students, with the parents, and with the educators, they have the opportunity to provide comments and to say, is there anything else you would like to share with us? And then we're able to look at that. And I think that what you'll see, again, is going back to Dr. De La Torre, what you're saying about, hey, the level of participation. Well, we have some schools that have strong participation for that school, and we can be even more confident about that school and about the teachers and the educators in that school and how they're feeling about what's going on in the school.
Okay. Along with that, I guess, those comments, I mean, is there a way you can share those with us? I'm sure Dr. Kennedy's seeing them, where they can talk about some ways that we can be supportive of them. I mean, is there actually something else that we could do for the teachers in the classroom to help them make adoption a little easier?
Yes, so that's something that I can definitely do and report and work with Martha and Dr. Kennedy and say what's the best way to be able to get that report succinct enough so that you're not getting 50 pages of comments.
Right.
But kind of saying here's where they are. But then the other thing is I think that we got a lot of information from the principals when we were able to talk with them, sit down with them for about 45 minutes. And I think that's been very informative also, so that's a report that's also coming out.
Thank you, Doctor.
Would you mind reminding the board the rate of frequency, elementary school experience curriculum once a week?
Yes. So
Middle schools once?
So elementary and middle school, they're doing it at a rate of once a week, whereas the high schools are doing it once a month. And then we find some variation in between that I think that also part of that best practices of implementation is to say, here's what we suggest. Here's that your team here has done a wonderful job of developing a calendar to help to support the schools that RAC did not have, but then also to give them the freedom to be able to say, this is what we felt like really will work for our building, and here's what we can do for year one. So we had one campus that instead of doing it at the high school once a month, they did it once a quarter, and then next year they're going to say, so we're going to try to up that, but we wanted to be able to respond to all the things that are going on at our school district, at our school building.
So you gave them quite a degree of flexibility.
Yes, and that was really about your team and managing that and saying, so we consulted, but managing it and saying, what's going to be best practices and how do we move it forward. The other thing is that you have a 5-year commitment for implementation, which is an amazing thing. And so what I want to be able to do is that when I talk to schools, is never a thing of saying, well, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. It's about, so if this is where you are, what's the next step? Here's the next step. And so when I come out throughout the year, I'm here for about 3 or 4 days, and I'll get to 10 to 12 schools in those few days. And it's really about brainstorming, reflecting, and say, what are next steps? And it's also about us learning and say, hey, what are you guys doing that's great?
I just had a quick question. Since 25% of the teachers said that they didn't implement the lessons at all, did they give any kind of reasoning beyond time constrictions as to why they didn't buy into the program?
So that I'll have to go back and look at that. And it's not that they said that they didn't implement it all, they just didn't do it with high fidelity.
Oh, fine.
So they're saying that maybe I did the idea of the lesson, but I really didn't, like we recommend about 15 minutes to be able to prepare for the lesson, and you can actually read through the script. But maybe they're saying, no, I didn't really take the time to read through the script or read through it. I just walked in and winged it. And so we can actually look at that and look and see if they made comments as to why they didn't implement it at that level. These numbers are not surprising for year one, just for anything, because the teachers are learning it. So my first year of doing something, I'm learning it. I'm not going to do it with the high level fidelity that I'm going to do it at year 2 and year 3 when I have this lesson. Like, I know this lesson, so I don't have to really prepare for that. I can do this and I can do a great job.
And I think that goes to my second question. How much training did they receive between the lessons and who trained them? And then years going after year 1, are the lessons the same every single year? Or do they change from year 1 to year 2?
Right.
And who's training the teachers on this and how much time is actually spent on it?
Yeah, so with the training, so last year I came out and I trained all the counselors and I trained the trainer model. So I spent 2 days with counselors. They went back and they trained their school level teams at, was it 2 or 3 hours? It was 2 hours. So they had 2 hours to be able to train their schools. Of course, there's some variation in there. Some, since we really only have an hour to be able to do the training. So, but they did the 2-hour training. And then this year, the counselors, so someone from the RAC Foundation, the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation, came out and did a refresher training with counselors. And then they're going to go back and spend some time, an hour, to kind of refresh. the lessons are going to stay the same for K through 8. And then your RAC team, called the RAC Sisters, are really rolling it out for the high school and saying, we're going to do this on a four-year rotational basis to be able to say, here's what we feel like is important over these 4 years. But because they're only implemented once a month, then at the high school, it's not as intensive as it is at the elementary. But a 7th grade teacher who taught the curriculum this year, they're going to teach the same curriculum next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr.
All right.
Ochoa.
I think the program has good intents, but I have some reservations about it. One is the implementation. How is this done across the board? Because I think some of your results have been, if you looked at it, it's how it's been interpreted at the levels, at the high school, I know at the elementary, I mean, kids are kids. They're real nice. They haven't learned anything yet, really, of how to be, other than being good kids. But as they grow up, of course, they start changing. And then I think some of your results have been maybe impacted by how the students are growing up and their emotions and everything else. My other question is, did I ask a question yet?
Yes, and I'll answer the implementation.
Oh, implementation,
Yes.
that's right.
Do you want me to go with that one, or do you want?
Well, the implementation is, the consistency, is that, again, a result of the interpretation? Because the consistency, as I saw in your charts, elementary, then middle school, then high school just drops off quite a bit. There's no consistency across the board. And one of them that really stuck out was the staff. Staff.
Right.
If you bring it back up, it's like, well, staff should be pretty consistent across the board because we're not dealing with students. We're dealing with staff. Why is there such a level of difference there?
Right. And again, so the implementation, one of the things that you guys have done is, as I've gone to school, is that schools have implemented in the ways that they feel is best for their school site. So there's one middle school that has their student leadership team teaching the curriculum to everyone else with adult support. And it's amazing to see that happening. Whereas another middle school, they have it at certain times that they're doing it, and they have this set time. One of the high schools is saying we will do it at, the first time we'll do it during first period. Second time we'll do it during third period, and they rotate through when they do that implementation, but they're setting aside a specific time. What we're seeing across with the elementary schools is there's, again, a wide variety, but they are, holding to your value of accountability, and they're saying, the principals are saying you have to be able to, so some principals are saying, we want it Monday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some are saying, whenever your team decides to do it, your whole team has to be able to do it at the same time.
But what about staff?
As far as, why is there a difference in?
Yes.
And that's going to be the staff perception at that individual school. And so we see these numbers that aggregate for staff, but then when we start to look at any individual school, then that's going to change. We're going to see that some staff are going to perceive that safety is higher at the school as compared to a different school. And it's just their perception of what's going on at the school as to the reason why it's different.
But the aggregate, you put it for the total, all the schools. You didn't do it by individual schools.
For which one? I'm sorry.
You got to go back, yeah, there.
Right here.
Yeah. Well, not that one, not one before. See, it's always staff. I think it should be more green if we are doing it. I mean, I can understand the students and I can understand the parents. It's the staff that I'm just like, what's happening there? Why is the message not getting across?
So what this is going to be asking the staff about so when we talk about kindness, do I model kindness? Do I see students using kindness at school and in the classroom? And so part of the reason why you're going to see that difference in staff by school is because they're just seeing different things what we would want to be able to
When
do.
you say school, you mean from middle school to high school?
No, by individual school, so.
But
you know,
see, you're not showing that, you're
Right,
showing an aggregate.
because of the number of schools, that's where it starts to change. But what we would want to see as far as staff to student here is that this is a closer graph than what we see on some of the others, is that 61 and 69%, we want to see those closer. And yes, we're going to see some differences between elementary, middle school, and high school.
That I understand.
But we really want to be able to see that closer. But the reason why we would want this to match up is because there was one graph in here where we're seeing that the staff are saying that things are a lot greater than what the students are. So if we look here at this elementary one, is that for social emotional learning, 31% of the elementary students are saying it's excellent. 41% of the staff are saying it's excellent. We want to see that to be closer in numbers so that we know that everyone has a real picture of what's happening in the school, and then we start to change those numbers. Because if that number stays off and we grow, then we don't have staff that's responding to student need, which is the important thing.
How do you measure social emotional learning?
So we ask them a series of questions that go to social emotional learning. And so some of the questions are, do students stop and think before they get angry? Like with social awareness, can I learn from people with different views from my own? So it goes to those areas, and then we aggregate that together.
And they all get the same questions?
Yeah, so the elementary get their slightly different set of questions than the high school, just because we wanted to be able to get a little bit more robust at the secondary, but we want to make sure that the readability for the elementary is there.
Okay. All right. Another question was, when you mentioned our scores, and you said our scores went up because of the implementation of the RAC, how did you come up with that?
So what I'm saying is that when we have a student who is reporting a higher level of kindness overall, and so in year one, we can't, these are not saying that RAC itself is having an impact. It's hard to measure impact the first.
Yeah, I know, but that's the way I took it and I interpreted it. That's why I was questioning it.
Okay.
Because we have other initiatives across the district that we're funding and we're pushing, which are targeting our scores. And I think those should also be considered. I'm sure that this has an impact, but I don't think it's like, when I first saw that, I thought, well, wait a minute. There's other initiatives that we're doing that is also promoting our scores. So,
right. So this is not saying that those are not. What we're looking at is, so when we look at the STAR assessment, we're looking at the top scores being about 1,500 to 2,000, then 30 points on that score. Overall, that's why it's about 2%. It's not a lot, but it is a difference. So it's not saying that it's counting for the major difference in the change of scores that a student with higher level feeling of safety is counting for all the difference in those scores. But what it's saying is that it does make a difference for all of these. And then again, with the end of course for algebra, the top score is going to be about 4,000. But 115 points is not, we're not saying that makes all the difference, but we are saying it does make a difference in the scores. And then part of it, I can't run all of it to be able to know, say you have this initiative and this initiative to be able to say, hey, this is what's going on with that initiative. But we can isolate it and say, are these issues, or does the issue of safety have an impact on scores?
okay. Well, it's just that I have a hard time doing the correlation, because what you're telling me is that if we're in the school and it's sunny every day, kids are going to perform better. If it's raining every day, because of the environment, their scores might drop because of their social environment. So that's the correlation I'm making, but it might not have anything to do with the weather. It might be something else. So the correlation, I just can't see it like you do. That's why I question it. And then another thing is, What does this do to our curriculum in the class instruction? How does it impact? Does it take away from it?
So actually, what happens with social emotional learning in general, so with any program, it actually adds to it. So you end up, a teacher says, I'm going to take this 30 minutes a week to be able to teach specific skills to a group of kids. When they're using the skills, we see better student-teacher relationships. We see less interruptions by students and less behaviors, less office referrals. So that's what the data across the board says. So what you're doing is that you're investing the 30 minutes, but the rest of the time is because you have students who are more engaged in the learning. So you're actually getting back more time because the teachers actually are dealing with less interruptions. So a student who has, I put a group of students into a group to do cooperative learning, and they have an issue. Well, if they don't have the skills to deal with it, I have to deal with it as a teacher. I spend 5 minutes to be able to deal with that. I multiply that about 3 times a day, or I'm losing a lot more than that 30 minutes. You know, they're walking in the hallway and they're coming back, and so they're coming back from music class and something happened in music and I have to deal with that. Well, I lose 10 minutes of instruction, and you multiply that throughout the year. When you can reduce those things and students are actually able to handle a lot of their emotions of what's going on because they have the words, then you actually increase academic time because your instructional time becomes more efficient.
Well, another thing was that don't we have PBIS in our schools already? So that's positive behavior intervention support. You heard of that, right?
Yes, definitely.
So Region 19, I think, is the promoter of that. So that also has an impact on how our students behave. The question I'm asking you with this is because I just became a teacher, so I'm highly aware and I'm highly sensitive to everything you've been putting up there. That's why I'm asking these questions. But
No, please.
okay, so I think that was it. I would just, yeah.
So I would say that this works well with PBIS. And so with PBIS, with the positive behavior intervention supports, is I choose 3 to 5 things that I really focus on and say, you know, this is how you're safe in the hallway, this is how you're safe in the classroom, this is how you're safe in the lunchroom. One of the issues that sometimes we see with PBIS, and the research would support this, is that it's more extrinsic because I'm having to tell the student to do this every single time versus a social emotional learning curriculum becomes more intrinsic because the student actually knows what they need to do. And so it's not about saying, this is how you're safe in the hallway. You know, how are we in our environment? And it promotes actually a higher order thinking for our students when they're thinking about what they need to do versus us telling them what they need to do.
Well, I think the intent is very admirable, like I said. The other thing is, are we going to hold our teachers accountable for implementing this program? We are?
She's right here.
Yes, sir, it is a district-wide initiative.
Oh,
Yes.
we
Hi,
are going to hold our teachers accountable for this?
Actually, we are, sir, and if I could answer some of the questions in reference to implementation, just want to let you know that our district RAC team, which is represented from a counselor that volunteered from each of the learning communities, has worked together since last year to create what we call Google Classroom Lessons, where this curriculum, which is Kindness in the Classroom, is being teacher-friendly and it's delivered in that manner. That's one of the things that we are doing. We are recommending since last year that our teachers implement once a week in elementary and middle school for 30 minutes. The curriculum for each grade level comes with 4 units, and each unit has 4 lessons, so a total of 16 lessons. And they also participate in kindness projects or service projects done in their school or in their community. And like we had mentioned also as well, in the high school level, they're doing it once a month for 45 minutes. And just to kind of go back also with the question prior to, I believe, Mr. Goodyear, in reference to the curriculum, did it change? We started with our high schools with a foundation. What our high school students this coming year are going to start with is the second part of our year 2 lessons, and they were developed. Also, they're rooted very much in the social and emotional learning. They're also addressing mental health. They're helping, all of these lessons are geared or are addressing the social and emotional competencies, which are 5 of them, and they're building each and every year.
Well, I just think it's taking up a lot of our time in the curriculum, in the classroom.
The input that we have received from our teachers every time we have gone out there to not only talk to them and survey them, but also is that they really like the presentations that we have done as a team in the Google Classrooms because it's teacher-friendly and it's already very, very minimal prep time, and it's bringing the kindness culture in the classroom. And just like Dr. Morgan had mentioned, as early as November, they had been sharing principals and teachers have been sharing that their discipline referrals had gone down because our students are getting that common language, and they're definitely learning the skills and they're building. So imagine if that was year 1 implementation, how it's going to be as we continue to implement. Teachers have been very receptive to it and have been very happy to see this coming. We had a teacher at Edgemere Elementary tell me, thank you for bringing this, because for once I'm getting to teach the whole child. I'm getting to know the child from the inside out.
Okay.
And so
But
that's very
one
important.
teacher.
Well, that's
Your
one
survey
comment.
there didn't reflect all what you just said. And the numbers weren't up there yet. I'm sure it's all great, like I said. I'm just saying that I just don't want to take away from, we've just started initiatives. We're trying to build the learning curve for our children, bring them up. I just don't want to impact that with adding another curriculum to it that will take away from the classroom time. That's all. That's my concern.
And again, that was one comment from one of the teachers, but all around, even in high school students at like Riverside High
But
School.
like I said, your
continue
survey
to-
doesn't reflect that.
Yes, I understand that, sir.
I mean, I know what you're saying, but your survey doesn't reflect that.
I understand that. Thank you.
I just have a comment. I agree with Bruce. I know our teachers are already overwhelmed, especially our core, and I'm not in education, but our core curriculum teachers that teach the core. I know they're overwhelmed. I love the random acts of kindness. I really do. But I don't know how our teachers find the time, especially the teachers that teach core, the core subjects for the STAR. That's, to me, I would think it's overwhelming, like Bruce said. That's just my comment, but I do like the program, but I just don't see how the teachers have the time.
Fair enough.
Mr. Rosales?
I'm not familiar like Cruz is with statistics and what have you, but I look at society today in a much different viewpoint. Once we leave this meeting tonight, if you turn your TV sets, all you see is violence. And you may be watching a program and what have you. The first ad that you'll see is the Avengers or whatever it is. It's nothing but kill. And unless you've been in a firefight, a true firefight, you truly understand the finality of death. We live in a society where death is not real. They get shot, they get up, and it's another thing too. And so it puts a lot of burden on every one of us. It puts a burden on the district, the teachers. God only knows how much I appreciate all that they do, the burdensome. But we as a society have been conditioned to violence. We accept violence as a way of doing, and what I see, and initially these figures are just, shall I say, preliminary. This is the first round, if you will.
First year.
Yes.
But things will not change until we continue and reinforce that there's a good to each of us as human beings. And I feel that maybe right now, as we look at numbers, they're not what we would want them to be. Even though we're putting some additional burden on the school teachers, but of course, this is a sign of the times. This is a sign of we're trying to prevent all that we can from things like Parkland. Today, I listened to one of the parents. These are the things we're addressing, the things that should have been done. It should be done nationally. And thank God that we have the leadership that is looking And I would want to see at least another year, possibly another 2 years, to see these numbers improve, Cruz. I think they will, because it's a mental conditioning.
Thank you for saying that. One of the things that we have also been reported from various teachers and administrators is that the mindset has been shifting, where we used to always say bullying this, bullying that. We're now showing kindness this, kindness that. And going back with the SEL skills, it's about not only getting along, how to manage your emotions, be aware of your emotions first and foremost, how to manage your emotions, how to build those relationships, which we need in learning, because learning is about a relationship, not only with the adults, but with their peers as well. And so making the best possible decision for our students, and that's what this program is bringing to us and building those skills in our students.
You know what?
Sorry, go ahead.
I just have a quick comment. I agree with Mr. Rosales. This isn't the first year of implementation. And we said this, I think I said this during our safety presentation from our superintendent. If during this first year we were able to impact one child, 2 children, that made a difference in that child's life, then that's important. Because we are not just teaching them here in school. These skills they will take on into their adulthood when they do have jobs. And so it'll change the face of society. We might not see it now, we might not see it in a number, but we'll see it in the way that these children behave as adults. So we are making a difference, and I appreciate the program. And while there might be some kinks, and we need to shift some things, make some, make some improvements or get more data. I think we're on the right path, so thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. What I would say is, and this is from my own personal experience as a parent, that we have a lot of kids that are going to school and they're holding it together all day long, and when they get home, they're just melting. They have a meltdown, and that's what was happening with our kid, because he was being bullied and picked at school, and we had conversation. At the conversation, we sat down with the superintendent and said, what are we going to do about this? We can fix this. But what was happening is the teachers may not have seen it, but at home, because he was having those meltdowns, we were just stopping and saying, you're not doing anything else. I don't care how much other math homework you have. You just can't handle anything else for this evening. For your well-being, we have to stop. So that means he's falling behind, and although we don't necessarily see it sometimes in the classroom, which I think most of the time we do, but our parents are seeing it when these things, and and it wasn't because every time students were being intentionally mean, they didn't have skills to do other things. So then we were doing things as parents like pulling them off the bus. And if you think about the impact on your parents when they're doing that, when they're at the school, once every 2 weeks for an hour meeting and taking off work to be able to do that has a huge impact on the community. And when we can actually give our students the skills and they have a better experience of schools, then the learning environment does change. Because they're not worried about what this kid is doing, they're focusing on academics, and that's what this program is about. So it's not just something that I believe in as a researcher, as a school leader, but it's something I believe in personally, and I know that it works.
Do we have any more questions? Thank you very much. We
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
time.
Yes, thank you.
Right now, before we go on to our next, I'm going to go ahead and call for a health break. So let's get about 10 minutes here. I feel like it's going to be a long conversation. 7:09. That Mr. Bustillos is gone. Watch it. There he is, there he is. All right. So before we start with our next report, because our last report took us about an hour. So let's see if we can kind of pare it down just a bit so that we can move on forward. Not really talking to anyone in particular. All right. Who's next, Dr. Delatorre?
We've got President Woodruff, members of the board, guests, we've got a presentation, a bond update, a lot of work, a lot of progress in the district. With us this evening is the principal, that's like the CEO, the president of VLK, our bond programmer, who's going to give us an update and talk to us about specific projects and what it looks like in the near future.
Thank you, Dr. Delatorre, and thank you all for allowing me to give you guys a presentation tonight as you guys are preparing to come back from summer and get kiddos back in school. This is, I was asking John Klein just a second ago, this is our third summer in this bond program. Hard to believe that it's been over 3 years since we started this expedition with you guys. I'm going to talk briefly about some high-level things, kind of a snapshot of where we are right now in the bond program, how we've gotten here, and then I'm going to get into some details on some of the projects. As you know, this summer is the first summer since the bond program was initiated where we've completed some very major, or completing some very major projects, those being Thomas Manor Elementary School and Bel Air Middle School. So we're going to talk about some of the specifics of those and some of the things that we've experienced and learned that we're going to carry forward into the rest of the bond program. How do I advance this slide? There, thank you. So I don't want you to get too excited about these numbers because this changes every single day. But I wanted to show a snapshot of where we are financially in the bond program with the projects that we've completed thus far and the projects that are underway either in design or construction and the amount of money that we've allocated toward those projects versus what was budgeted. So if you look at the projects that have been closed out in the table on the left, you can see what was budgeted originally for those projects, the money that was spent, and the savings that we've been able to accomplish. Roughly speaking, approximate numbers were at $8.2 million in savings on the projects that we've closed out thus far. If you look at the projects in progress on the table on the right, these are projects that are either in construction, or actually all these projects are in construction at some phase, and the amount of money that has been allocated to those projects based on either the contract sums under the general contractor or the guaranteed maximum price under the construction manager. You can see that we're projecting with a combined savings of projects that have been closed out and projects that are in progress, approximately $23 million. Now, again, we're not going to count our chickens till they're hatched. You don't want to spend money you don't have yet, but these are pretty solid projections where we are to date. Now, there's 5 projects that aren't included in these numbers that have not gone into construction yet. That's Bel Air High School, which is in construction, but we haven't realized all the phases of that project yet, and we'll get into that in a little bit later on in the presentation. Ysleta High School Fine Arts Edition, and then on this next slide, is there a mouse pad there? There we go, thank you. You can see, in addition to Bel Air High School and Ysleta High School projects, these other 3 bid packages have not started yet. So we have budgets for all 5 of those projects. They're inclusive in the bond program that we haven't realized any savings on yet because we haven't formally issued any POs for the construction of those projects. So these are the actual titles of the projects that have been completed: the athletic enhancements, the district-wide security projects, structural repairs to Constant Hubert and Riverside Middle, The gymnasium addition to Eastwood Knolls, the cafeteria addition to Tierra del Sol and Desert Air, additions and renovations to Rio Bravo and Ysleta Middle Schools, and additions and renovations to Parkland Middle School. And these are the projects that are remaining that are underway right now. Thomas Manor Elementary School, it is on time. Its original substantial completion date was scheduled for June 8th, but there's been some things that have happened over the course of construction. There's been some scope additions and revisions, and that's resulted in contractual substantial completion date of July 31st, which they received their certificate of occupancy. They're in their punch list final clean stages right now. Furniture is being moved in, teachers are occupying, and we're underway. So we're feeling really good about where that project is in preparation for the start of school. Bid package 14 is the cafeteria additions to Lancaster Elementary School and Barron Elementary School. It is also tracking on time. Again, there was some scope modifications during the course of construction that contractually changed the original substantial completion date, which was July 31st to August 20th. Specifically, we had some changes in interpretation between the plan review with the City of El Paso and the Fire Marshal's final inspection walk, which happened a few weeks ago in regards to making sure we had a voice evacuation component to the fire alarm system. So that's really the only thing that's changed that substantial completion date. That's underway, and everything will be wrapped up contractually on August 20th and get those kiddos in time into that portion of the project on both those campuses on time. Bid package number 11, the renovations to Hank High School. If something could happen on an existing campus when they start uncovering unforeseen conditions in a renovation project like that, we've experienced it on this campus. It's been a constant surprise after surprise after surprise, which is not abnormal in a high school of that age. When you start getting into the structure and the roof and above ceilings, you start to find things that there was no way that you can anticipate. Contractor's done an excellent job of handling that. We've been working through them. The original substantial completion date for that project was July 30th. All the learning environments are going to be set for the start of school. There's a few things such as some roof work that's going to work into the weeks after school starts, but it's not going to affect in any way the students' ability to participate in classwork there. Everything, like I said, in the learning environment side of the project is going to be on time for the start of school. Some of the other projects that are underway that are pretty far out, the Fine Arts Edition at Ysleta High School is tracking on time. Its substantial completion date is July 31st of next year. As you know, another major project that's been going on for a while is the Eastwood High School. It is tracking on time. We have a few, overall substantial completion date is September 25th of next year. There's a few bits and pieces of that campus that are coming online before that, including the academic wing, which is scheduled for the end of this year in December. And then the balance of the project will come on in September of next year. The other big projects, the combination school, and that's original substantial completion dates, August 26th of next year, and it is tracking on time. The middle school pieces are going to be done December 3rd at the end of this year, with the elementary school finishing up in February. And then the remainder of all the site work for that project, landscaping, site circulation, and paving, will be done by the summer for the start of school in 2019. The STEM early college renovations at Parkland High School are also tracking on time for July 31st of next year. And the sports complex addition to Bel Air High School is tracking on time. And I'm going to get into some more details on that project towards the end of this presentation. Bel Air Middle School, everything's good with that. Next slide. Sorry. Okay. I didn't know if that would play. I have an analogy for some of the things that we've experienced at Bel Air Middle School. Have you ever been on a plane where you're coming in for a landing and it's real rough? It's real rough, like, are we gonna make it? I don't know. And then you land, pull up to the gate, and the pilot says, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying American Airlines. We hope you have a nice day, and thank you for come fly with us again." You're like, huh, what just happened? I need an explanation of why I feel like I just almost lost my life, and everything's cool, and you just want me to grab my suitcase and depart. That's not why I'm here. This is a rough landing on this project, and we've learned some lessons on it, and I'm going to talk about those here in a second. I do feel confident that we're going to be able to land and depart the plane. But if I were to continue the analogy of the airplane, if you imagine everyone that's involved, either directly or indirectly in a successful flight, it's not just the pilot, and we're the pilot in this analogy, but it's the crew, it's the flight attendant crew, it's the ground crew on both airports, departure and arrival. It's the scheduling crew that doesn't even ever see the plane. It's the mechanics, it's the food service, it's the air traffic controllers in both the air towers at both airports. The same thing for a construction project. You have us, the program managers, you have Mr. O'Neill's staff and everybody on his side that's involved. You have the architect and the engineering team that's on this project. And then you have the contractor and the massive amount of subcontractors that they have on the project. There is an army of people that are striving to make this project successful, and I'm confident that it will be successful, but it is going to be a very rough landing. This is just a recap of the facts of the project. Designed for a core capacity ultimately of 1,200 students as you guys grow into it. I asked Pat today how many students he has arriving this year, and I think he said 759. It is a phenomenal building. We've been spending a lot of time there this summer, obviously. I spent a lot of time there with the team this morning, and I couldn't be more impressed with the job the architect's done designing this campus. It's going to be a tremendous facility for your students. Some of the things that happened along the way with this project. What we're experiencing right now with this rough landing and getting done at the very, very last minute is a result of some mistakes that we made over 2 years ago. And here's some of those mistakes. And they all revolve around VLK, specifically me, being as aggressive as possible to get this project underway, get it designed as quickly as possible, and get it in construction so that we could open it this year and not push it back further. And I'll explain what I mean by that here in a second. So our original plan was to start designing this facility in February of 16, shortly after you passed the bond, and issuing a notice to proceed for construction, issuing design documents in October of that year as well. We did start design in February, but we were unfortunately not able to get the notice to proceed as soon as we had anticipated, which was an aggressive schedule until January 9th of 17. So we lost some time there. Partly that's because the bond plan that we put together in the summer of 2015, which included the scheduling of every project that was going to be in your bond and the associated budget for each of those projects, we had to schedule that out in a finite manner so that we knew how much inflation that we wanted to encumber for each project. For example, this project, if we were to have done it a year later, its overall budget would have been different because we would have had to plan for an additional year of inflation. So that's what I mean when we scheduled out the entire bond plan, and this particular project was one of the first ones that we wanted to get out on the street. So we were able to get started a little bit later than anticipated, and we also had some lessons about, this is reflective of our aggressiveness as well, about how we needed to work with purchasing to make sure that our procurement and contract issuance was meeting all the district policies. So what I had originally put together with John and our schedule back at the very embryonic stages of the bond plan, we weren't able to realize, and that's our fault. We should have done a better job of working with Christine and her crew to understand exactly how much time the district needed in order to bid the project, get all the paperwork in place, and bring it to the board for approval. And since then, every project after this, after we learned this lesson 2 years ago, we've planned appropriately for. So I've been able to throttle back on my aggressiveness with the schedule and make sure that we have the right amount of time in there for the bidding process and be able to get the contracts in front of you for approval, make sure that the overall construction schedule is appropriate for those projects so that we don't run into the situation we run into with Bel Air. So as you can imagine, the design schedule and getting the notice to proceed pushed the overall construction schedule timeline as well. So we ultimately, by virtue of us starting a little bit later than we had originally planned for in the program management side and then the overall purchasing side, we lost about 3 months. I had a choice at that time. I could have said, we need to push this project out a year. Or I could have said what I did say, no, we're going to make it happen. We're going to get this project under construction, and we're not going to lose a year because I don't want to encumber that as inflation dollars, which if you see here, would have been at least another $1.5 million associated with this project if we would have pushed it a year to open next fall. It also would have had implications for the district in regards into the campuses that you're consolidating into this new school from an operations standpoint. And frankly, the 5% inflation, when we bond plan right now, because of the activity in the market, we anticipate 10 to 12% per year inflation for at least the first year that we're planning out. So 1.5 is conservative. It could have been more. Some of the other things that happened once we bid the project, when we were evaluating the subcontractors that Urban Construction brought to the table, there was some concerns about the concrete subcontractor from the beginning of the project. We started to see the results of some of that concern early on. There was a tilt wall issue as well as a retaining wall issue that happened during the course of construction that was disconcerting. We didn't, I said it, talking about how aggressive I was with the planning stage. We didn't get aggressive enough early on with the construction team when some of these concerns started arising. We were meeting with them every 3 weeks. What we have done as things have progressed is we're meeting every 2 weeks, and we're carrying that same lesson forward in all the other construction projects. Anytime there's one inkling of a concern, whether there's 2-week look-ahead items during the course of construction that aren't being met, or anything regarding the subcontractors or the architecture and engineering teams aren't answering RFIs or whatever the case may be, we're jumping on it in a much more proactive way with the entire team to make sure that we're attacking it early on. Because as you can imagine, if things start to get a little sideways at the beginning of the project and you don't write them, those tend to just exacerbate over the course of construction. Bel Air Middle School was 20-month construction project, so that's a lot of time for it to exacerbate itself, which is kind of what has happened on this project. So again, lesson learned that we've been applying to all the projects in the remainder of the bond program since Bel Air started. One of the other things that is somewhat of a lesson learned, although we know this, but it's just kind of hindsight's 2020. We procured this project using a competitive sealed proposal methodology. At the time, the project was a new ground-up project, clean site, although it's a very tight site, but clean site. We felt that when we had to make the decision and bring a recommendation to the board for their approval to utilize certain procurement methods, we had recommended competitive sealed proposal for this project. As the schedule stretched because of the things I showed previously, it would have been more preferable perhaps to go with a CM at risk procurement method. When you start to get phased and truncated schedules, and Bel Air Middle School, as you know, kind of has 2 pieces to its campus. It's got the athletics side with the competition and auxiliary gymnasium and the football field, and that's separated by the main drive, and then you got the rest of the school side. So when you start to deal with phasing like that, you start to deal with a compressed schedule, and and then you exacerbate all that by having a very tight site, a very active construction market that where the labor market and the subcontractors are already stretched. CM at risk gives you the ability to have a partner during design that helps identify opportunities for example, early bid packages to get them on the site sooner. I'm going to show you an example of that with Bel Air High School here in a second. So perhaps the CM at risk procurement method might have helped alleviate some of the constraints that we've experienced working into the summer. However, I feel like the remainder of the projects, since this project was assigned, that have either CSP methodology or CM at risk methodology, are in good shape because of the things that we've been applying in our overall construction schedule planning that we've learned throughout the course of our growth in this bond program with you guys. So ultimately what we've done is, from the very beginning of Bel Air Middle School, we set that project up to give us zero margin for error. Putting it in a position where it's coming online at the end of July, which its contractual substantial completion date is July 30th. Any little thing that happens in any facet, whether it's our issue, the district's issue, the contractor's issue, the architect or engineering team's issue, something happens with final inspections, with the city's inspector's interpretation, right or wrong, any little thing that can happen, obviously it puts us in a position, which is where we are now, getting down to the very, very last second for those kids to get in school. So there were some options that we could have exerted during the course of the project from day one. As soon as we started realizing that there might have been a performance issue with the construction team, we could have terminated their contract. We evaluated that several times over the course of the past year and tried to understand what the implications of that would be for the project and for the district. And the only time in my career, and my firm's overseen at least $10 billion of school construction projects across the state of Texas, that we've claimed the bond with the surety on a project and terminated the construction contract with the construction team was in 2006 in Crowley ISD with Coronado Builders, and that's because they went bankrupt. So it wasn't really even our option. They closed their doors. So we did have to claim the bond with the surety, and that's like, it's similar to an insurance claim if you wreck your car. You have to rely on the surety to come in and supplement that firm's work, and it takes a long time. It would have undoubtedly pushed the project out at least a year to opening, if not worse. So we felt like that's not a solid option. Let's keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing the builders to get caught up, to get the project done and on time in lieu of looking at that option. We also talked about supplementing the general construction contract with either other contractors or the district's own forces. A couple of issues with that. One, you're basically adding to the chaos of an already chaotic situation. There's an immense amount of coordination that has to happen on these construction sites. When you throw in a third party, the coordination of that and the overlap of their responsibilities and the general contractor's responsibilities, you start to create opportunities for finger pointing. And one of the issues that we're facing on Bel Air Middle School is there's already a limited supply of subcontractors that are the quality that we need on this project, that can meet the insurance requirements that we have to have on this project. So the market technically tapped out in that regard. We just didn't feel like there were any solid opportunities to bring on a third party that would truly help accelerate the schedule. We also talked about delaying opening school. Dr. De La Torre and I had a deep conversation about that. My recommendation when that came up, which is about 2 months ago, was that the pain of delaying school for the school district, delaying this school opening for the school district would be worse than getting these kids in as the school is going to be ready to, in the next couple of weeks. There's going to be some things that aren't finished, which is on the next slide, but the learning environments and the administrative environments are all going to be ready for those kids on the start of school. They're going to be serviced out of the new kitchen, and we felt like getting them moved in on the start of school would be better than delaying it and doing some sort of mid-semester move or even waiting till the school year was over. Some of the things that are not going to be complete the day school starts, one is the softball field. The other is the exterior basketball courts, the auxiliary gym. I'm saying it's not going to be done. There's a chance it will, but right now, as of today, we're not worried about things that might be done. We're focused on the things that we know have to be done for kids on the first day of school and things that we know they can get done. The auxiliary gym would be a bonus. We've talked about it with Pat and his team about if the competition gym is finished, can we function? And the answer was yes. The north end of Venado Street, we have worked out with the construction team. They have worked with the fire marshal to make sure all emergency egress and ingress is being maintained. But the very north end of that, up by where the tennis courts are, will not be finished the first day of school. The football field and track are going to be finished, but that's new sod. They're laying it today. I don't know how much they got down, but they had all the trucks out there with the new sod ready to go. We need that to take. We need it to get rooted. So we recommend that the football team doesn't get on it the first day of school because we want to make sure that grass gets established and it gets nice and rooted in before it starts being used. The library will not be finished. It's an area within the fine arts wing of the school that can be isolated and cordoned off so that students can still circulate around it and get to the rest of the fine arts portions of the campus. But the library is not going to be ready. And then the stage in the cafeteria. The only thing that's not going to be done is the floor. It's ready to be used. And if it needs to be used for any programs or anything, it certainly can be, but the wood floor will not be ready. That's the same subcontractor that's doing the gym floors. We want them to finish the gym first before we let them into the cafeteria area to finish the stage. That's my spiel on Bel Air Middle School. I'm going to stop now because I know that you probably have questions before I move on to the other projects.
Do we have any questions? I just have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you feel confident that the work that is happening at the school is of the best quality? I mean, the best quality that.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question.
Because
and
of all the push, we don't want to sacrifice the quality of what we're getting.
Of course. And thank you for asking that because it's a point I wanted to make and I forgot. Every conversation we've had about getting done has not gone without making sure that the required quality of the project is also not being met. So looking at the workmanship as I go through the project today, it's there. There's going to be a lot of cleanup that needs to take place. There's going to be a lot of touch-up that needs to take place. But in no way have we allowed any corners to be cut so that they can get finished or allowed them to sacrifice the quality of any of the finishes or any of the systems. They all meet the technical design guidelines that all the projects in the district are required to meet, as well as the education specifications for finishes and space and lighting and ceilings and HVAC, all of that. So no, we will not let them sacrifice quality just in order to be quote unquote finished. If they don't meet the quality standards, they're not finished. And we're working to make sure that we hold them to that. And they recognize that. It's not something that we necessarily have to point out to them. I do feel that they truly are committed not only to getting it done as quickly as they're capable of doing, but also making sure the quality is there as well.
Mr. Rosales?
A couple of points. Eastwood, I'll start with Eastwood. The projected amount was 93 million. And according to your board there, we've already spent 91. It seems like we have a lot more work than $2 million worth.
Oh, did you say that last part again?
You got budget at 93 million, and we've already spent 91.4. So we've got about $1.5 million. But when you look at the layout and everything that needs to be done, it seems like we need.
You need more money than that?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 91, 423, 345 is not checks that have been written. It's the POs that have been issued. So it's not, spent's probably the wrong term. It's spent and encumbered or allocated. So you haven't spent out of your bank account all 91 million.
All 91, okay.
But it is assigned to that project. And that's all the POs that have been assigned to that project. That's where that dollar figure comes from.
Okay, thank you. The other point is when you talk about Hanks, and there's a question about the contractor. And my question to you, is that project going to be finished by August 30th?
The overall project will not be finished by August 30th. The interior of the project will be finished by August 30th.
Where it would not encumber the students, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, now this is where I get a little bit, and I'll be honest with you, we as board members rely on the expertise of people like yourself. And for us, or Dr. De La Torre, or Mr. O'Neill to constantly be there, it's unfair to us. And if I seem harsh, I am harsh, because it's a domino effect. That Bel Air community has got this stigma that never have we had anything done for them. We're finally getting something quality, and there's been problems. And the problem in the planning, why was there such a delay from February to October in the planning process? Then the actual should have been, you said you started on February the 23rd of 16, but didn't get done till January. That alone gives me an indication that we were going to be behind. We were going to be where we're at simply by the delays of the design and what have you. Can you explain that?
Yes, sir. The timeframe that you're referencing between February 23rd and October 17th, make sure I get to the right slide. Is the time it took to design the project, to put all the construction documents together and get it out to the construction market to bid. That's aggressive. That is fast to design a middle school. The timeline from October 17th to the notice to proceed date of January 9th to that notice to proceed is telling the general contractor, you're awarded the project, the board has approved you, here's your letter, you can get out on the site and start. That's the timeline that we did not do a good job at the very beginning when the bond program passed, of understanding what the district's process was for securing contracts and bringing the recommendation to the board. We didn't have that much time between October 17th and January 9th in there. We've corrected that on all of the other projects since this project bid.
The other point, and this is a question for you, the items that are not completed at Bel Air, and there's I think 7 of them, when are they going to be completed?
Right now, I don't have a finite answer for you, and the reason is because I want them focused on the things that I know that they can get accomplished for the start of school, and then we're going to dive right into getting hard dates for those remaining items. If I were to give an educated guess, it would be all in with the softball field and the tennis courts and all the site-related activity, October 1. But I don't want to give that commitment yet. We can report back to you after the start of school and we get some more finite dates from the general contractor.
That main thoroughfare between the school and the fields and the gymnasium. I was there, I believe, Friday. I think it was Friday. When were we there? Friday?
Yeah, last
And
Friday.
we were told that they were working on and they eventually were going to bring the curbs. They have the machine, all this and that. I went by there today, and nothing's happened. So maybe there was a reason for it, or maybe we need to continue going down there. But I'm wasting a lot of gas driving down there.
All the curbs for the teacher parking lot were poured today. The machine was on site today.
Okay.
They poured almost half of the curbs for that roadway, Bernanda Street. Some of them are covered up with construction dirt. They do that on purpose so that after they pour them and they're rolling heavy construction equipment back and forth, they don't tear them up. But the curbs are in place, and they will have that street paved all the way back to where the tennis courts are before school starts.
Dr. La Torre, where does that set our situation as far as the children?
We've received assurances from VLK and from Urban that school will open on time on August 27th. The students will be in a safe and secure environment. Classrooms have received all of the furniture. The administrative offices are currently being set up. The cafeteria will allow us to make sure that we provide breakfast, lunch, and snacks for students. The library will not be available to the students for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, but we'll accelerate that. The visual and performing arts classrooms and rehearsal rooms will be available. As I think Sloan has pointed out, the softball field will not, but that's not mission critical. We obviously have to have all of the driveways, the egresses and ingresses in and out of the property complete before we can pass the inspection. So that will happen later this week or early next week. The main gym will be available in the event that we want to hold PE classes there. The auxiliary gym will not, but the main gym is far more than they have now available to them. The areas where the general contractor and subcontractors will continue to work will be cordoned off, and students will not have access to those areas so that they can continue and work on that. But the reality is that that Bel Air High School will not be complete on the date that we indicated on the timeline, but Bel Air Middle School, will open on August 27th and welcome 800 students, faculty, and staff. You know, Dana DeRowan has a great attitude. That attitude will transfer to his administrative team, his faculty, and staff. And I think in hindsight, in a month or two, when we look back on it, it will be a little bit, it may have been a little bit of a nuisance and a disruption, but ultimately, I think when the school is complete, it's something I think that the entire community, the entire neighborhood can be very proud of. I think what we need to work on with BLK and with Baines, the general contractors, to make sure that we do not find ourselves in this situation again when it comes to the fine arts facility at Ysleta High School or the gym at Bel Air High School. Any future support from our community depends on finishing strong. In other words, it's okay to hit a speed bump somewhere in the journey, but we have to recover from it and make adjustments. Eastwood High School has to open exactly when it was planned to open. I think that will happen. North Loop Combination School, I think, is also out ahead of schedule. I think Sloan and we have all the confidence, the board has the confidence in BTC to deliver. And then we need to, I think, be very vigilant relative to the life cycle projects at all of the other schools that seem to be overshadowed by these big projects, and make sure that we deliver, because there's an old saying, and it's absolutely true, and that is the best way to get support and prepare for a future bond or a future investment in the school district is by delivering on this bond. And that's what we're committed to do, and we're going to make it happen for the students at Bel Air Middle School, and then we'll take steps to make sure we don't find ourselves in this situation. You know, and in conclusion, they're still going to get a school that is under budget or on budget. It's the quality that they need, that they deserve to be successful, both the students and the faculty and staff. And ultimately, we relied on local labor, and Urban is a local contractor. We stand by that commitment, and if we stumble by that commitment as well, but that's where we find ourselves. I think the important thing is that 800 students, we will welcome 800 students on Monday, August 27th, and then we'll make all of the adjustments we need.
Ms. Lucero?
So that brings me to, and I know you said, but the classrooms and the actual cafeteria, those have passed inspection, there's no final touch-ups needed, they're ready to go?
Now, the classrooms have received their temporary certificate of occupancy, which means that teachers can come start moving in. There's a few life safety pieces that they're finishing out this week to get the certificate of occupancy for students to come in there. Same thing applies to the cafeteria. The cafeteria is about a week behind the classrooms, so as this week finishes, it'll be in the same shape as well. So the answer to your question is not today, but by the end of this week, yes.
That's what you anticipate?
Yes.
When's the punch list for that one?
Punch list has already started. We're punching as soon as we can get into each space. The architect and the engineers are punching as it becomes available. As
the trade finishes,
as the trades finish, they're getting there on a just-in-time basis. The contractor and them are partnered very well together to make sure that they're getting in there and punching that out, so the contractor has a nice list they can be finishing as they bring each section of the school online.
And do you have someone on site? This is a very important, obviously, project. We're hoping for very important deadline dates. So is there someone on site when the contractor's on site, like the
Yeah.
whole entire time?
Eddie Acosta is our project manager for our team, and he's there every single day, working with them for a couple hours, making sure that the things they said they were going to do yesterday have happened that day, or working towards whenever the deadline they set was accomplished. ASA, the architect, I won't say is there every day, but they're being very proactive as well. They're, I would say they're there the amount of time that's needed given the situation, as well as our engineers. So there's a dozen people outside of the construction team that have partnered with them, making sure they're getting every single piece of information needed as soon as they can get it to them, so that there's nothing beyond the contractor that would be holding up anything getting complete as soon as possible.
So the drop-off zones and all that are ready to go?
They have to have drop-off, and emergency vehicles have to get to and from the site, so that's what they're focused on now with.
You're not turned on.
That's what they're focused on now with the concrete. In fact, I think they hired an additional concrete company to make sure that that can happen. Without that, the city will not release the building.
Are the teachers in already? They're already moving in?
Some teachers are starting to move in. They've been given permission to move in and start setting their classes up. I think furniture's been arriving, 3-4 weeks ago, and it's been assembled. It will be one of those things where I suspect people will be working on Saturday and Sunday, the day before Monday.
They're actually going to be having a Warrior Nation. Would you go ahead and tell them about it?
Principal DeRowan has announced that we're going to have a Warrior Nation tour on Saturday, the 25th, from 9 to noon, to make sure that it's open, and he does want the public to be doing tours.
Okay.
So everything will be ready by then.
Good to know.
Right.
All right.
That was a question.
Let's just compound the problem. Mike was asking me something. So in the design stage, the design took 90 days more than originally anticipated. Is that what we can interpret from that, planned versus actual?
The time that we started design was 30 days later than we anticipated, because we didn't get started, VLK didn't get started with the program until December 9th. That's when we were approved by the board. I had built into the schedule being able to start as soon as the bond passed.
I think I'm talking about the two first lines. It says design start 2016.
Right, February 23rd. So that got us to the point where we could procure the architecture team, do the interviews, assign projects to the architects. So that February 23rd is technically 30 days later than we originally anticipated.
Okay.
The timeline between the 23rd and the 17th is exactly as planned, those many days to design the project. Then from October 17th to January 9th was 2 months longer than we anticipated, again, because we didn't do a good job of understanding what the purchasing requirements were to make sure that we got the project bid and under contract and to the board for recommendation. And again, we've right-sized that in all the projects since then. So the time that we got out of the starting gate was 30 days later than we originally planned, and the time to get the notice to proceed to the contractor was 60 days later, 60 days more than we originally planned. And that's just
So we were 90
our bad.
days behind from day one.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. Since you were, excuse me? Yeah, since we were 90 days behind, and again, I ask you, why wasn't the board made aware of this? I guess my point is that it's very important for us to deliver a product that we tell the public. And I guess, and again, this is in retrospect, but we rely on people like you. And if you knew that it was going to be 90 days or potentially 90 days behind. I kind of wish that we would have been aware of this. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty, and I guess we're going to be able to move in, but it puts it's not a good feeling to kind of just you put us out in the limb, so to speak.
Understand.
You come back, well, we're going to be okay at the final end, except for a few things. I don't think that's the way to run a railroad for as much money as we're talking about here.
You're absolutely correct, and we should have done a much better job communicating that back in October of 2016, or if not, by January 9th of 2017, and certainly will not let that happen again. I don't take lightly what you said, Mr. Rosales, about the pressure that this is and has put on Dr. De La Torre and Pat's crew. It is unfair. It's not they have plenty else to worry about running this district. They shouldn't have to be on construction sites virtually every day to make sure the projects are getting complete. And we understand that, and we're doing everything to correct that so that doesn't continue to happen on projects that are remaining to be completed. All I can offer is it won't happen again, and I apologize.
Anything else on this one?
I had an update on Bel Air High School that I just wanted to quickly go over, if that's okay. And the reason is because that's a very complex project, and so I want to make sure that you guys feel assured that we are applying the lessons that we've learned on Bel Air Middle School and not repeating them on Bel Air High School. I have John Panahi from Baines Construction in the audience. I invited him in case you have any detailed questions about the construction schedule. He's going to have those answers. But big picture, this is a 4-phase construction project, and we're in the first phase, which is the demolition components of the old gymnasium, getting utilities in place. And then we're moving into phase 2 and 3, which is getting the building concrete and earthwork going. So right now it's a hole. It's not exciting. It's pretty interesting. But right now, the point that I'm bringing to you is everything is tracking on time with that project. We still have phase 4 that we have not sent out to bid yet, and that's planned. We're not behind or anything. But these are what's coming up. It's the MEP and special systems package, and then the overall architectural and landscaping package that we've been meeting regularly on through design with Baines to make sure that what we're putting in the drawings, or what Alvidra is, the architecture team, is putting in the drawings, is going to be able to meet budget requirements, be constructible, and be able to meet the scheduling requirements. I also have Brenda in the audience. She's the project manager for that project. So if you have any detailed questions about Bel Air High School, either John or Brenda can answer them. But they are, all phases are tracking on time right now. We have 0 concerns at this point. And to Mr. Rosales' point earlier, sometimes we want to be overly optimistic to a fault and not raise a yellow flag if we don't feel we need to. That won't happen again. Lots of going on, but if something gets on any of the projects that are left, gets off kilter, or there is a yellow flag that needs to be raised, whatever the case may be, we'll be sure that that's in the bond update report.
Do we have any questions on this? No?
I just had a quick question on something else. Can you go back to the financial summary?
Yes, sir.
The 8.2 million that's already been saved on closed projects, has that been allocated to anything else, or is that just money that's been returned to the district?
To my knowledge, that money hasn't been allocated to anything else at this point. In a layman's terms, it's sitting in your bank account.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
And just for the board, any money that's saved, any money that is allocated cannot be spent without your permission. Cannot be redirected, cannot be reassigned. It has to come before the board with a recommendation and action item, and you have to agree to it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Klein.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Harris, I said Klein.
All right, we're going to move at a somewhat of an accelerated pace. The next item is policy EIF, alternative graduation requirements. Robert has taken the lead on this. If you have any questions, we will make ourselves available to you. If you'd like to see something amended, modified, or if you'd like to leave it as is, that would be terrific.
Good evening. We just want to provide you an update on Senate Bill 463 and the alternative graduation requirements. I know how to do this. So first things to point out is the candidacy requirements. So before we even enter a possible candidate, they have to first meet 4 prerequisites. One, they have to have been an ninth grader at the start of the 2011-2012 school year. Secondly, they have to have met all high school requirements. Third, not pass an exam. And lastly, they have to have attempted the exam a minimum of 3 times. So unless you've met those 4 prerequisites, we cannot continue forward. Now, the state has adopted these 4 ways. Once we reach to this point, candidates are then looked upon and looked on the various criteria to see if they can graduate. Because essentially what happens is the adults have not passed an assessment. And so what the state has outlined is they found that if the student had already had a GED in which they passed the exam, or provide evidence of attaining an industry-recognized certification, that could be used also to waive the assessment. Third, provide evidence of an honorable discharge or general discharge from armed forces. And lastly, if they have completed some sort of college coursework. So essentially, once a candidate reaches this point and they meet one of these criteria, then they're eligible for a diploma. Now, in June of 2018, the board also adopted these further criteria. So if the individual did not meet the state mandated criteria, we can also apply these 4 criteria that the board approved in June. Essentially looking at the individual course grade. So for example, if I fail the mathematics portion of the assessment, and looking at the transcript, the student earned A's in mathematics, we can apply that and waive the assessment. Secondly, it can also look at the individual scores, in which if the student has progressively shown an increase every year, we can also waive the assessment. Third, participation in some sort of remediation. And lastly, any other academic work or life experience. I'll give you an example. If I missed the mathematics portion of the assessment, yet I worked in a bank for 3 to 4 years, that life experience can be applied and the student may be offered a diploma. I'm going to present, Mr. Vasquez will kind of quickly walk you through the process because we do have a process in how we vet individuals.
I'd like him to run us through it instead of walk us through it.
What I'm passing out right now is 2 documents. One of them is the flow chart.
Excuse me.
Right now, what Mr. Basurto just explained to you. Thank you. It's a flow chart of the process Mr. Basurto laid out for you. That'll be the first document. On the second page is the paperwork that starts this whole process. So just to give you an idea of where we're at right now, if a student wants to receive their diploma under these requirements, first step would be they would go to records and get their transcript and their test scores from Laura Guerra. She would then give this information to Victor Perez, who works out of counseling, guidance and counseling right now. He would audit that transcript just to make sure that they have received all of their credits. After that, he'll bring that paperwork to me. I'll compile it and convene the graduation committee, the IGC, the individual graduation committee, and we'll determine if these candidates have met these requirements. If they have, we'll all sign, the committee will sign and certify that they have met these requirements. I'll take them back to records where Laura Guerra will update their transcript to show that they have met graduation requirements and will receive their diploma. At that point, she will then order their diploma from Herff Jones. I did have the pleasure last week of calling our first 2 candidates to personally tell them that they had met their requirements, and it was really, really neat. Both ladies were ecstatic, literally yelling on the phone, nearly in tears by the time we hung up. So it really was, it is really worthwhile, and we currently have a few more of these folks in progress that we'll be meeting on soon, so we can hopefully give out some more diplomas. To date, we have signed off on 7 former students who will be receiving their diplomas. We are getting, in the process, I've spoken to Patty Ayala and her team about getting some posters out to each school, so that way we can advertise this. We're going to be putting this on social media. As a matter of fact, we put on social media last week a picture of me calling these folks, telling them that they have received their diplomas, and we would like to have a news story as well, just to get the word out and hopefully get more students who are in this situation their diplomas as well. At this time, we are open to any questions.
Do we have any questions?
Just, do we have anything online that these students can go and look at the process that they can?
Yes, we're in the process right now of putting this online, especially that second page that I just gave you, because that really starts the process and that tells them what information they need and where to go and who to call. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, on your flow chart here at the bottom, where you have, does the student meet alternative requirements for Section A or B? And then further down, it says Section B again. Then I look at Section B, it's TBD.
I apologize for that. That was actually written before you all passed the local requirements back in June. So that's that document needs to be updated, and that'll include those 4 provisions that Mr. Basurto laid out.
The ones that he showed up there a while ago?
It would be these right there.
Oh, okay.
So they'd need to meet one of the first slide, or excuse me, all sections of the first slide, and either one of the second slide that the state laid out, or one of these requirements as well.
And why couldn't you add them?
Gave you the wrong paperwork, to be quite honest with you.
Oh.
Didn't give you the updated one.
I thought it was some legal requirement or something.
No.
Yep.
Any further questions?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vasquez, why don't you go ahead and segue into the Juvenile Justice Alternative Education Program report.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to bring up Dr. Grace Martinez, principal of Cesar Chavez Academy, as well as some folks from juvenile probation. We have Linda Garcia and Jennifer Contreras. Also, Mr. Basurto has been working on this plan with us, as well as Susan Austin. So what we have here is a plan to consolidate the 2 JJAEP programs in the county. There is currently one here, which is housed at Cesar Chavez Academy. They serve all of the school districts to the east of us, to include Socorro, Clint, and so forth. The second JJAEP is housed in El Paso ISD at the Raymond Tejas Academy, and they serve EPISD as well as Canutillo and Anthony. We're currently, we've been in talks with JPD for the past several months now, and they've planted the seed a while back that they would really like to see the consolidation, and we here in Ysleta house the JJAEP for the whole county. So we've talked a little bit about that. And then just recently, within the last month or so, we received a call from the leadership out at EPISD, and they asked if we would consider going into an agreement with them to house and to serve their students as well as those in Canutillo and Anthony. You know, just like we want the best for our students here in our district, the folks at juvenile probation, they want the best for their students. And in their eyes, they feel that Ysleta ISD, and in particular Cesar Chavez Academy, is the best option for the students that they serve.
Who feels that way, EPISD?
Well, as do they, yes, sir.
Can you say that again?
So why do they want, well, let me go back real quick. So So what we're working on, Susan Austin, and she is working with the legal counsel from YISD to write an addendum to the interlocal agreement that you all passed, I believe, in June. And this would include the addition of the 3 new districts. So they're working on that, and we'll bring that up for consideration at the September board meeting.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Would those students still belong to those other districts, or would they become Ysleta students? Exactly, and where would the funding come from?
That's a great question. They would become our students. Once they're in the system, they'd become our students. And I will talk more about the funding issues in just a couple more slides, if you don't mind.
No problem.
Thank you. So why Cesar Chavez? Why do they want us to house the JJAEP? First and foremost, great leadership. Dr. Martinez and her team have done an outstanding job. This is evidenced by their monthly evaluations as well as their yearly evaluations. They have done a great job with restorative practices. Something that they've taken the lead on here in the district. I will tell you, I've seen that personally, and I've seen both sides. They have with their students, they have a firm but loving hand. And when you start the day out there at Cesar Chavez, each student goes through a search process. Every student, they have 3 officers on duty, El Paso police officers, and each student is searched for drugs and weapons. And I'd venture to say that Cesar Chavez is the safest school in the district, with the possible exception of maybe YPK and Parkland Pre-K, but they are an extremely safe school. Other reasons why the JPD came to us for this was because we have great facilities. If you've ever been to the campus there at CCA, open, spread out campus, that beautiful old house there in the center. One thing that Dr. Martinez will tell you is we don't have crowded hallways to walk through. And as you all know, that's when a lot of misbehaviors occur, is when we have kids bumping into each other and so forth. We don't have that there at Cesar Chavez. Students that are separated very deliberately, where we have middle school students in DAEP, high school students in DAEP, then we have separated the JJAEP and the middle school and the separate high school. They have separate lunch shifts, so they've taken very deliberate steps to create a safe environment there. In addition to that, we have 2 adults in every classroom, something that is pretty unique, I think, to our district. And I think it's a reason, if you look at the staffing there at Cesar Chavez, we don't have a high turnover of teachers. And I think it's because they feel so supported, not only by the campus leadership, by the district leadership, who provides that for the 2 adults in every classroom. And as I mentioned earlier, we also have 3 El Paso police officers on campus daily. Where's the... Finally, we do have the space to house these students. We have a 16-to-1 ratio in both middle school and high school at Cesar Chavez. And historically, these numbers of students, we wouldn't reach that ratio. And if you think about it, that 16-to-1, really, there are 2 adults in every classroom. So technically, we could go higher, but we don't want to create that type of environment. But we would fall under that ratio of the 16-to-1. As part of the interlocal agreement, and we can have our folks from JPD answer this once we're open for questions, this would also include a provision to include elementary students. Now, typically, we don't get elementary students in our JJAEP program, but that would be one of the requirements from the state, is to approve this. But they would be housed with our middle school students. And again, these would be for students over 10 years of age. Benefits. What benefit is this to us here in Ysleta to accept these students? Well, first of all, we would have folks from JPD totally dedicated to us. Currently, they have to give their time and effort to both Raymond Diaz Academy and Cesar Chavez. Now they would be able to provide 100% support to us here in Ysleta. Also, there would be no additional cost to the district, since it looks like we would be meeting those ratios. There would be no additional staff required, and we do have enough space out there in terms of portables. Just to give you an idea, looking at historical data, we have last year, throughout the whole year, Ysleta served at Cesar Chavez 11 students throughout the whole year, 9 in high school, 2 in middle school. And at Raymond Diaz out in El Paso, they serve 15 students. So we would be well under that ratio. Another benefit is that in talking with El Paso ISD, they said that they would ensure that they transport any of their students, and as well as those from Canutillo and from Anthony, they would all be responsible for transporting their own students to Cesar Chavez, and that would be written in the interlocal agreement. This would also provide for increased funding to our district. Currently, we receive $86 per student per day through the JJAEP. And that gives you the numbers there. Last year, with that came out to $32,000 for us and $41,000 out in El Paso. Now, something new that was written into the interlocal agreement was that there's going to be a 90-day minimum placement in JJAEP. Out in El Paso, I believe there was like 30, 40 days might have been the average placement, but we would have a 90-day minimum placement, which would actually increase that funding. This is aside from ADA, which we would also collect for our students. So these students would be assigned to us, Mr. Cudier, and we would be getting this funding for both ADA and for the JJ.
And once they leave the program, the funding would go back to their campus?
Yes, sir, they would go back.
District, wherever they're from?
That's exactly right, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On the amount dispersed, YSD gets 32,000 something and EPISD gets 41,000? And after this agreement, they still get that same funding?
No, so all of that would come to us now.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. And that's just based on last year's numbers with us having 11 students and EPISD having those 15 students.
Okay, so those 41,000?
Yes, sir.
And how about, what is the other school district you have in there?
So it would just be the two, so between El Paso, they serve Canutillo and Anthony.
Oh, okay.
So right now, we're working on a transition plan where Raymond Diaz they have currently 5 students enrolled out there. So they would continue to serve those students into the end of their placement, and after the interlocal agreement is agreed upon and signed to, then we would be receiving the new students, but these students would continue to be served at Raymond Diaz until the end of their placement. And that's all we have for this presentation, but we have these folks with much more detailed information if you have any questions for them.
I had a couple questions.
Yes,
And Robert, I think you may have already answered it. Is El Paso closing Tejas?
Yes, so that'd be part of the agreement where they would begin phasing out Tejas once they continue serving these 5 students, and then they would close their doors.
Okay.
So, Mr. Ramirez, essentially, there's 2 JJAPs in the county.
Okay.
And so EPISD pretty much predominantly serves the west side, and we serve the east and the far east. And so with this, we're going to pretty much be the only game in town.
Okay. And based on their performance, I can't think of a better place for any of those students to be at is at our facility at Cesar Chavez. I'm just kind of curious, the testing that's mandated, these students are going to have to meet all those requirements as well too, correct?
Yes, yes. Do you want to talk to us about the testing requirements?
We do test them here, and the scores all go back to their home schools. So once they leave Cesar Chavez, they don't stay with the district. All their test scores go back. Through JPD, though, we also test the kids. We're held accountable that we do raise their academic levels. So they're pre-tested and post-tested, so we're held to a standard that we do have to increase academics as well as behavior.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one quick question on testing. Do students also get the opportunity to take SAT or TSI testing if they're during that time period in your school?
Yeah. Absolutely, and the DAP and the JJAEP do.
Okay, awesome.
I have a question. Dr. Martinez, and you do a great job.
Thank
I
you.
visit the campus, but obviously we're neighbors. I live right behind you, and you know that my neighbors are going to ask me the question, do we have all the logistics taken care of now that we got these more buses coming in to the area?
Say that again, sir?
The buses coming into the area, with the logistics of all these kids coming in from these different areas, do we have the logistics covered?
Oh, yes, because right now, currently, all our JJs are bussed in. We also have a bus coming in from Parkland. So we have about 5 to 6 buses that come through every day. And so we haven't had any issues with the community because we come in from the Alameda and come out through the backside and just go back onto Alameda.
So we're going to stay with the status quo, right?
Yes, sir.
And because you've been to our community meetings, and like I said, everybody's excited. You do a great job out there. We just want to make sure we keep
Oh, yes, we
everything in-
will keep them happy.
Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to say congratulations to you for your good work, and I think it's showing now in the increase of responsibility that Ysleta is now going to take on. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate the opportunity. At this time, Ms. Austin, our Chief Legal Counsel, is available to answer any questions that you may have relative to the recent TASB Policy Update 111. If you've had a chance to review that, she is at your disposal.
Mr. Ramirez.
I had 42 questions on this. Dr. Del Toro, you can order late night dinner. Okay. Ms. Austin, just a couple of questions. On page 4, I'll give you a chance to get there. Yes, ma'am, the vantage points, I apologize. On page 4 at the bottom, curriculum and instruction, and then specifically instruction, it talks about provisions addressing dual credit programs have been revised in EHDD legal to reflect amended administrative rules, which require dual credit partnership agreements to address defined sequence of courses where applicable. Can you or somebody here define sequence of courses?
You know, I'll be happy to look on those rules and get back to you on that. As I recall from looking at it briefly, well, I can tell you what TASB says about it, but you can look at that too. I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, like I said, the way I understood it was that you had to take courses within a particular major or within a particular thing. We just couldn't offer, we just couldn't offer a course that would not be part of a particular degree plan. That was my understanding of it. So I'll wait for your answer.
Okay, I'll be happy to get that to you.
And then on page 5 under state assessments, it talks about EKB legal. And I guess this is for the board and for Dr. De La Torre. It's not so much a question, it's a comment. It talks about on the 5th sentence there, to aid in the rehabilitation and professional development of an educator who violated test security and confidentiality to protect students, parents, school officials, or personnel. I read that a couple of different ways. When I'm tired, I read it one way. When I was rested, I read it another way. I would just like to state that if, obviously, you know, we're all humans, we make errors, and that's one thing. But, you know, in my mind, if we violate the trust, I don't see any reason for remediation or rehabilitation or whatever you want to call it, okay? And so I would hope that we as a district, we stand strongly, you know, and not accounting for that. Now, but law tells us we have to do it, I understand that. But otherwise, I just think that if we knowingly break the rules, then we need to act appropriately.
And I think what it's doing, it's giving us some latitude to make sure that we don't kill a fly with an axe.
Right.
And if someone makes an innocent mistake or there's a misstep or they weren't aware of it, that be handled one way. But I think we all agree with your perspective relative to someone who intentionally tries to game the system to avoid accountability or to elevate student achievement, growth, or performance as a way to avoid being held accountable for those students that are under their charge and those students that they're responsible for. So I think we would always, I think, as an administration, consider the case and then probably shoot out a board communique outlining the incident and any steps that we believe are appropriate. Give the board ample time to consider our response and weigh in, and then ultimately make a final decision.
And the only reason I brought it up, because it wasn't on the legal counsel reference table. It wasn't on there to be looked at. And so I just wanted to make sure that if you all are going to go back, and by the way, I have great confidence that we'll do the right thing, because that's what we do here at the district. But I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to state that publicly.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
And that's all I have.
Do we have anybody else who would like to ask a question? All right, thank you, Ms. Austin.
Similarly, number 6 will give the board an opportunity to ask our internal auditor any questions relative to her monthly audit status report. I believe Champagne is still with us.
I actually have a couple of questions, and I'm kind of thinking that this may be something that is more directed to our administration, because as I was reading through our audits, I found in particular there was one school, and it was a follow-up audit where that it still had problem areas that weren't addressed and improvement needed on every single section. And I'm just wondering what steps happen after that. I mean, because it wasn't the first audit, it was the follow-up audit. And yet, that school still had a lot of the potential problems. And then the other question that I have is that across the district, I mean, almost every audit and in the follow-up audits, the timely attendance taking was still like a pretty big issue in so many schools. And since that determines so much of our funding, I'm wondering what steps are we going to take to work with that? Do we have anybody that can answer that? I don't know that Champagne is really the one to ask that, but.
Well, typically she would file the initial audit. We would work with our principals to develop a corrective action plan. If then after the corrective action plan, she goes out and determines that there are still deficiencies, findings, or adverse conclusions, then the responsibility falls on myself and the associate superintendents responsible for supervising those principals who are then responsible for supervising their faculty and staff to implement something at each school that would address Champagne's concerns. I don't know whether or not Champagne goes out a second time or whether or not she would ask for a second and different or distinct corrective action plan, because as adults and as employees, you would think that if you help develop a corrective action plan, then part of the process is that you initiate and that you execute that corrective action plan. So if it's not happening, I think there is a real possibility for certainly documenting, and there could possibly be other consequences, disciplinary consequences. Did I describe it right?
The way this year, we're kind of behind, so most of the corrective action plan, they give us within 6 to 8 weeks, most of the time. But I am behind in follow-up audit. So what you see, the follow-up audit really, most of them are a year old.
It's a year old?
Yes, most of them are about a year old, más o menos. So the way I do it is when I do the follow-up audit, we try to look for similar types of transactions. For example, if in the initial audit and in the corrective action plan, they say, for example, for the fundraising, we have this many areas that we need to fix. And they say, okay, we're going to implement the new review process. We're going to make sure we have the fundraising forms approved and money deposit timely. So we say, okay, so in the corrective action plan report sent to you all will be addressed pending verification. So now about a year after, and we go in and we select the transactions that is within this type of scope. And then we verify, are these with the with the results as the corrective action plan described. Deposit is more timely or things like that. And if the attendance side, if the coding say the PIMS coding, we found exceptions, then in the follow-up audit, we pick a different, more current 9 weeks period and then select some samples to see if the coding is still have exceptions or it's all with proper backup documentations. And what I do with the principals is that if my staff tells me we still have exceptions, then I give them a week, 2 weeks to see can you find more, whether maybe you misplaced and you can find your backup documentation to support it. Now, the summer, we have some projects we did in June before school went out. Now we wait until now to close it. I don't push them when there's only secretary and principal on campus, but we'll wait. So I think the time should be very reasonable, sufficient for the schools to act on.
In that case, it kind of worries me a little more if they're having more time to implement and make the changes that they say that they're going to make and that they're not doing it. So, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there as a concern for us to look at, because there was one school that out of the 4 categories, or 3 or 4 on the first page, they either didn't meet, I wrote the words down, but they didn't improve on anything. It didn't say improvement made or whatever. It said improvement needed, or that they didn't meet it at all. So just throwing that out there is something that we might need to think about.
Yeah, there are a couple things. One, we do have some attrition with administrators. So new administrators come in, they may or may not be aware of expectations and training, so we need to go back and look and see where corrective action plans haven't been carried out. We also have a lot of attrition relative to coaches, sponsors, and teachers in the classroom. So this is not exclusive to this school district. I think there are some areas that we audit regularly, annually, that have been problematic forever, historically. ASB accounts, attendance can be inconsistent. So we need to do a better job of training and increasing awareness and reinforcing our expectations, and training and increasing awareness and reinforcing expectations in some areas. But if there are other areas that are, I think, black and white, and the expectation is clear, and it doesn't require any special training or it doesn't demand interpretation because it's complex, then the supervisors, the associate superintendents, directors, and others have a responsibility to hold people accountable formally. And when that happens, I don't know that the internal audit office has anything to do with it. I think it becomes Bobby's world.
Right, that's kind of what I was saying when I began this, because all she can do is check and see what's what, and then implementing the improvement plans needs to happen. So, anyway, thank you.
What would you like me to do?
Actually, you don't have to do anything but keep checking like you're doing.
A comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've seen this over and over where they have correction action plans. I think I brought it up before, that those plans just are too lax. There's no accountability built in them. There is just, oh, well, you need to correct this or you need to correct that, but nobody, even if we follow up, they'll still have the same mistakes. So we need to come up with some method in order to say, hey, you know what? This is long enough. You need to correct this now, or whatever action might be required to correct this. I mean, it's just too many times I see the same, and it's not you. It's just that I've asked over and over what is happening with this CAPs, and it's the same thing. It just keeps going over and over. And then, of course, then we have all these changes, like administrative changes in these schools and everything else, and then it just gets swept under the rug. And so I think we need to formulate some kind of a plan to address this so we can stop this in its tracks and not let it happen, because there's no accountability right now that I can see.
And Bobby will speak more to it here in the very near future. But part of it is that it may be unmanageable, to be honest with you. And what I mean by that is, you want to hold the administrator responsible, who wants to hold the teacher responsible, who wants to hold the sponsor and the coach responsible. The coach and the sponsor rely on parents. Different parents come on board, different booster clubs come on board. They try to train them, get them to do the right thing. People feel like they're already volunteering their time, and now they're being expected to maintain a record of this, maintain a record of that, collect money in this way, deposit it in that way, and you've got 6,000 employees and 10,000 parents and X number of clubs and organizations that it does tend to get away from us sometimes. And keep in mind that we just pound and pound and pound academic achievement, progress, college career readiness, social emotional learning. And I think what ends up happening is, some of our leaders have to prioritize, and they have to decide where they're going to invest the majority of their energy and their effort. And I don't disagree with you. It's all important, and it's certainly something that we have to stay on top of, and that Champaign has to continue and monitor. Bobby has to continue and help us work with the associate superintendents to keep it relevant, because in the world of work that we call teaching and learning, it tends to get lost sometimes in the weeds, and it's just the reality.
I can understand, all these groups and how it's all the cash, but also the PEMS coding and all that, that's a different animal.
It is, but it's a foreign animal to a new principal and new assistant principal. It's a foreign animal to teachers. Is it an EL2 or is it an EL4? How many years have they been in the EL program? And those things are important because they can affect accountability and ratings. So that certainly is something that I think if you describe or you present to the principals and say miscoding of students can be incredibly adverse to your school's overall performance.
Right.
So it would be a disservice for you to work hard, support a faculty to work hard, have them work very, very hard only to find out that because they miscoded students, we don't get the credit that we deserve for that school.
Right.
But
so those are two different.
Point taken, and I think Bobby's going to speak to it a little bit in closed session here in the very near future.
Is that it? Do you still have something?
Are we talking about the other stuff that
Yes,
she put in the
please.
package?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay. I don't have any questions on this. But I do have question on the 2018 end of year inventory.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not an accountant, and never will be. I always never understood numbers in brackets. It's foreign to me. But on page 3, fuel inventory, I just couldn't make heads or tails of those numbers, and it's just for my education, it's nothing else. Unleaded fuel, gallons, beginning inventory, purchases, issued, the adjustment plus or minus vapor, and then adjustment for clerk error and the ending inventory. How does that work?
Okay. For fuel, we have the almost 25 years old system. So this system to keep track of how much fuel we bought, how much fuel is dispensed, that system it's called Phoenix. There's only one, as far as I was told, one gentleman knows how to fix this system. This system is no longer supported. It's a very old system. We have the tank, it's underground. And what we have in the Munis is it's able to be manually recorded into Munis.
Yeah.
Two systems doesn't talk to each other. So what happened, this one is very interesting because we went on June 28th. And by the time we reached to reading the tank reading, you know, you put the stick in and then read it, it was about 11:20-ish.
You put a stick into it?
To read the reading. But the warehouse staff had a reading the day before in the morning. But the two readings were very different. And that's the two reading difference is where we put it, where the internal audit reading and the difference that you can see from item B1. There we have unleaded, it's a shortage of 215 gallons. But for diesel, it's an overage of 194. And I asked the warehouse manager, he said, nothing was changed from the debut, June 27 morning to June 28, that by the time we went to it, no new purchase, and nothing was dispensed.
Well, I can understand the variance because of temperature and everything else.
Right, so that.
Liquid.
And
But I'm
way,
asking more about the numbers.
Yes, and the way we, our warehouse manage that is about each month, the clerk would do the reading and include, then also each time they will build, for example, transportation department, risk management department, operation, they all have vehicle. And each person who runs the district vehicle has two cars. One car is the personal ID, another car is a gas car. So when they need to when they need to fill the gas for the vehicle, they need to put those two cars in order to dispense. So that's the where issue means.
I think we're way off. Talking about number 2.
Yes.
I'm talking about beginning inventory. You took an inventory. There was a number there, 6,038.
Yes.
You purchased 194,107 gallons, I guess, yes.
Yes, it's gallon, yes.
Then you issued, which was, I guess, was pumped out 192,256.
Yes.
All right, so I understand that. Then adjusted for vapor, and then it says 1,359. Is that a plus or a minus?
That one is the.
I guess it's not in parentheses,
plus.
it's a
That's
plus.
a plus. Yes.
Yeah. Then adjusted clerk error, that's, I guess, for reading the stick?
The clerk error this time it's because at the end of the year inventory, one of the clerk has done this for many years, but once a year only, and she forgot some steps. So we had to ask the TIS program manager went in there to help her to make the corrections.
Okay.
That's where this clerk error came in.
And then at the end, it says ending inventory at 6/28/2018, it's 9,160. Right?
The 9,160, yes.
So where does that number come from?
This number is the 6038 plus 194 minus 192 plus 1,000 some minus 88 gives you 1960.
Okay. All right, so, okay. So understand that according to your, let's go to number 3 on page 4.
Okay.
On that column, quantity of items purchases is 5,959. Issues are 14,006. Net adjustment for the year is 3,366. Where did that come from?
Okay, that one, it's an absolute value because we try to show you how much the adjustments are. So if I net it out, you don't see the adjustments. So it's an absolute value plus and minus, but we remove the sign to show you total how much the adjustments are. It's by the absolute value.
Yeah, I don't know. Is Ms. Lin, you understand that?
I don't actually have a copy of that report.
Oh,
So I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I understand when we're talking about inventory and what's purchased during the year and then what's expended or used.
right, I understand that part.
That could get to ending inventory, but I don't know what you've got.
That net adjusted year end, I just didn't know where that number came from, and it just threw me off because of the other stuff that was presented.
Was it not a sum of the two numbers above it?
The adjustments is we download the transaction for the entire fiscal year and then take all the adjustments together.
You net them all and then apply the sum of all those adjustments.
Absolute value, not net.
What's absolute value?
Absolutely, the way we do is that because adjustment could be positive or negative.
Well, yeah,
Say positive 10 and negative 5. If I net it, then the total adjustment will be 5. But in this case, we show you total adjustment is 15.
well, now here you showed me a negative 3,366. I just don't know where you got that.
Mr. Cruz, if it would help, I'm happy to meet with you individually and we can go over that report together.
I would, if I
Oh,
had to.
wait, no, this one is a net adjustment. This one is for the June 26 to 28, the total adjustment was a net 3366. Sorry, I didn't see that one. Now, this one is a net adjustment. This one, we take all the downloads. If you come to my office, I'll show you the spreadsheet that we downloaded and all the adjustments, transactions added up for those two periods.
It's just misleading for me,
Misleading?
misleading.
Okay.
I had you explain the other one. I understand that one, but that one's a little.
This one is to show you the summary of transaction inventory during this year, how much was purchased, how much was issued, and how much was net adjusted.
Okay.
Does that help?
No.
No, I didn't convince you. Come to my office, I show you the whole paper.
I wish I had time.
I will improve on that. Do you guys like the new format, the almost half page only? Does it get to the point? Okay, any other improvements I should do?
I didn't have, Champagne, I liked what I saw, but I didn't have a chance to dig down deep into it, and I promise I'll find some time this week to look at it and come by to visit.
Okay.
Yeah, I did like the streamline. I mean, it's a lot better to read and understand.
All right,
It's just when numbers I don't understand them, that's when it's like,
Mr. Ochoa, are you back at work this week?
oh,
Are you back at work this week?
I started today.
Do you have a prep that couples with your lunch period or your prep period so that Champagne can?
Tomorrow at 8:45 to 10:20.
8:45 a.m.? Champagne will be there.
Yeah,
Okay.
again. Is it good
Burgess
time?
High School?
Is it a good time for you?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go. I just need to ask you which room where to go.
Yeah,
I'll go.
If you go to the front office, they'll
Yeah, they'll-
locate him.
Okay,
they'll search you.
8:45.
They do.
So I should wear the cowboy belt?
Everyone else was walking through, they searched me.
All right.
Told them to do that.
Thank you very much.
They thought I
Ms.
was bringing
Champagne.
another
We
idea.
appreciate it. So in the interest of time, do we want to skip a health break and just kind of go as you can? I agree. All right, let's move straight on in because that's the end of our reports, right? Okay, we'll start with our agenda review. Discuss agenda items as listed in the posted notice of regular meeting of Ysleta ISD Board of Trustees for August 15th, 2018, and related recommended motions with the superintendent and executive cabinet, and receive responses to questions and/or requests for additional information through the superintendent in preparation for deliberation and action on said items at the August 15th, 2018 regular Board of Trustees meeting. So we'll start with number 6, the Office of the Superintendent, and he will be doing a report on events, meetings, and conferences, and then we will have a board report from Ms. Lucetto. Number 7, the public hearing on the proposed rate FY 18-19. Okay. And then we'll move on to our consent agenda. Number 1, just stop me if you have a question, okay? Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, June 19th, 2018, 6 p.m. Number 2, monthly financial update for May and June. Number 3, budget amendments requiring board approval. Number 4, gifted and talented plan and qualifying matrix. Number 5, approval of award of YISD cooperative requisitions for purchase of buses. Number 6, fee schedule for use of school district facilities. Go ahead, Mr. Ochoa.
On that one, we had, I had that. On using the school facilities, that's $1,000 per hour to use our stadium?
Yes, is it by the hour?
It says by the hour.
Is it by the hour, Mr.? Wow. Well, we have nice stadiums, that's for sure.
Yeah, but that includes, and that doesn't include security and everything else?
No, sir, that would be additional expense. I beg your pardon. No, that would be an additional expense if custodian security is required.
Well, it probably will be because.
In most cases, yes.
What do we, who do we lease it out to? You have any before?
We have not leased it to anybody recently.
Oh.
So it's been a while since
Yeah,
we
but-
got the turf, we've been very careful on who we leased it because it was under construction for a long time too. It's just recently we've been able to go out and let people use it.
Yeah, that was the one that I saw the highest, but it's also the biggest facility we have.
And you remember, it's the greatest cost too, is to replace that turf.
Oh, yeah, and
So
it could
we
be
need to make
damaged
sure-
very easily.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that was just my question. What's per hour?
Yes, sir.
Wow, okay.
I had one question also, because I noticed that there was one soccer field that was included at Del Valle. We have no other. I know Bel Air has that practice field. We don't rent that one, or
No,
how does
ma'am,
that
that's
one
more
go?
of a practice field. It's not a regulation field. Del Valle High School is the only one that has a full
one.
regulation soccer field. Behind the press box,
Okay.
that field, that's a regulation soccer field.
Okay. So the use of the one at Bel Air, we wouldn't charge for. Is that what you're
It'd be
saying?
a practice field, and it just depends on how it would be used. If it's, say, a club team that is mostly our students, then there would be no charge.
Mm-hmm. Right. Any other questions on that? Okay, number 7, ratification of award of YISD requisition number 661 for purchase of TEKS resource system package. Go ahead, Mr. Ochoa.
No, I just want to know, what is that?
Can somebody explain that one?
Our TEKS resource packages are a comprehensive online curriculum that's available to teachers. It includes a scope and sequence, a year at a glance. It also includes lesson plans that are aligned or in alignment with our standards. It also differentiates pedagogy lesson plans for students who are EL or have special needs. So in many ways, it's the curriculum that the state of Texas expects our students to master.
I went into one of those, well, for me, robotics 2, mathematics, engineering, and engineering mathematics. And they give you the scope and sequence, but the lesson plans are still pending.
Yeah, for some disciplines they are. I think most of the emphasis has been on the core content, your tested subjects certainly, but it's English, language arts, reading, writing, mathematics, and those are just the standard mathematics classes.
I like it, especially if the lessons are provided, but in my area, they're...
You know, there's what do they call them, open sources?
Yeah.
More and more open sources out there that don't cost anything, that Meecha and her department are encouraging teachers to look into. Curriculum is out there everywhere now, video, PowerPoints, you name it. That may be another source
Yeah, they
to
have
support your
PowerPoints
class.
and everything available.
But this is the state-adopted curriculum that they want made available for all teachers in the state.
Okay.
Okay, number 8, ratification of award of YISD contract number 201-90016 with Region 10 Education Service Center. Number 9, approval of award of YISD contract number 201-90014 with El Paso Community College District.
Ms. Woodruff, I need you to move that to the action items.
yes.
So I can abstain from the vote.
We need to pull that, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Number 10, annual approval of district and campus improvement plans, goals and objectives in alignment with Vision 2020. Mr. Ochoa.
Sorry. These campus improvement plans, I've seen them, and some of them haven't been modified in quite a while. Who looks at them?
They're supposed to be modified annually, and they're supposed to be in response to performance. And so principals working with their CEIS and others are supposed to go back, look at the goals. But one of the things that we've done in this district is our board goals haven't changed and our targets haven't changed. So you're going to see a lot of redundancy. What you should see is if they're not performing well in a particular area, the narrative should be different in anticipation of the 18-19 year if the 17-18 year wasn't very successful. So if you notice some of that, elementary is Brenda, Dr. Chacon, Becky O'Neill can address those schools in her area. Kathy Kennedy can take care of any middle schools where it appears, because I know this is going to sound unbelievable, but there have been cases where they've taken last year's campus improvement plan, not in this district, but in other districts, and they've changed the date and resubmitted it.
Yeah.
And so we'll be a little vigilant about looking to make sure that that hasn't happened. And certainly our district improvement plan should have some changes based on some of the results that we've received.
Yeah, because when last year I went through all the ones in my area. I went through the campus improvement plans and I saw a lot of similarity. So I just want to make sure that something's keeping an eye on these things and make sure that they're compliant, even though they're part of our vision. And,
Right.
and so I just want to make sure that they address what's ever needed
Absolutely.
at the campus.
There should be
I
adjustments.
just don't want
modifications.
regurgitation. I mean, yeah.
Mr. Ochoa, Connie Vasquez, the Director of State and Federal Programs, she also regularly checks them, so I'll make sure to let her know. But every year, there are brand-new goals, data, not goals, but brand-new targets based on the data. So I'll make sure she gives them a second look. But she's pretty good about making sure they update their SIPs and DIPs.
And what I found out that sometimes what they wrote didn't match what that particular section was asking for.
Okay.
So,
I'll make sure she looks over them one more time.
okay.
Number 11, approval of award of cooperative requisition furniture. Number 12, ratification of award of YISD cooperative requisition number 39218 and number 1690 for track resurface services. And number 13, ratification of award of YISD contract number 201-90028 with University Medical Center of El Paso. Okay, going on to the policy items. Policy action item number 1, policy CV local facilities construction. Go ahead.
I have a question on that. What does that mean? It says the revision delegates to superintendent or designate the authority to choose the construction, delivery, and what has it been before?
Great timing. So in the past, working with our bond programmer, with VLK, we allowed them the latitude to decide whether or not the methodology would be a CM at risk or a sealed competitive proposal. This policy gives us, the board and I, the authority to decide whether we want it to be a CM at risk or a sealed, or the CPS. This is that lesson learned. If we had gone back and we had made Bel Air Middle School, if we had relied on the CM at risk methodology, it's more likely than not that we wouldn't find ourselves in the current situation we find ourselves in at Bel Air Middle School, because from day one, the architect and the general contractor work side by side so that they reach agreement, not after the general contractor has reviewed the plans, but as the plans are being developed, they're being vetted by the general contractor so that there are no disagreements relative to what's possible and what's not possible relative to construction. Sometimes the design comes in, it's beautiful, but physics won't allow it. And so then they have to go back, start all over, and they have arguments and discussions and so on and so forth. And I think some of that may have happened initially at Bel Air Middle School that resulted in that 60, 90-day delay. From now on, they can recommend something to this board, but we can simply say, no, we believe that the project is too important, too complex, too comprehensive to rely on a sealed competitive proposal. And what we'd prefer is a CM at risk, and we have the authority to do that, and they'd have to adhere to your wishes.
Oh, okay. I just want an explanation of what that meant.
Well, my pleasure.
Okay, policy item number 2, policy EIC local academic achievement class ranking. Okay, on to the action items. Action item number 1, endorsement for TASB Board of Directors, Region 19. Number 2, order accepting certified tax roll 2018-19. Number 3, order setting tax rate 2018 and 19. I just have a comment on this one. I think at our meeting, we need to remind our constituents that we're not the one that their taxes aren't being raised because of us. I think a lot of people are going to look at because taxes are going to go up. We didn't go up, but taxes are going to go up because of the valuation of homes. And so I think we need to have some comment maybe at our board meeting about that we're not the reason that the tax rate is going up. So maybe can that be done during the hearing part? Or would it be better to wait till we get to this position here?
One way of doing it would be to have just one of you simply ask the question and have Ms. Leeper go into detail relative to
Sounds like a great idea.
what's happening in terms of the retreat from last year's tax rate by ½ cent. Last year, we retreated an additional ½ cent, so we're a penny less than what we thought we would need when we went out for the bond. And so it's not that we're giving anything back, it's that they'll pay a penny less than we thought that they were going to pay at this point in time. However, it's a catch-22. If the value of your property continues to increase, whether or not we reduce the property tax rate, it's still possible to see an increased property tax as a result of your increased value or the increased value of your home. And we can simply reiterate that on Wednesday.
I would just like for the public to know that, because I believe that we've done our due diligence in keeping their tax rate at a rate that we promised and under. Go ahead,
I think,
Mike.
and I would pass the baton to Ms. Leeper, but I think the public has got to be aware that in as much as your comments about not raising anything, this year has been a reappraisal year. And so as a consequence, regardless of whether we drop a penny or drop 2 pennies, the valuations have gone up, and so consequently, it's created quite a mess down at the central appraisal.
I'm sure it has.
They've had to readjust their budget to be able to undertake all the protests, if you will. But there's a tremendous amount of lack of knowledge to the community because a lot of that is not explained. And I would rather that Ms. Leeper, since you're very familiar, possibly tomorrow you could comment about that.
I'll be happy to.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Just one last thing. I think we also need to constantly remind the community, because I was at that KVI Extra on Sunday night, and they shared tax rates, local school district tax rates. And if you look at the number, just the number, it appears that we have the highest tax rate in the county. What's missing is the entire conversation around the homestead exemption. That when coupled with the state homestead exemption, makes us one of the lowest taxing entities in the city, but no one would be aware of that unless we keep putting it out there in some kind of an illustrative way.
And that is what we have to bring up on Wednesday, is exactly that.
And we'll have a diagram that shows the comparison of two homes valued at $100,000 from District A and District B. One gets the initial, I think, 20% homestead exemption. Then we both get the additional $25,000 homestead exemption. Then you apply the current tax rate.
Do that.
And what you find is that we're significantly lower than the neighboring school districts.
Yep.
We'll put something together that maybe we can throw up on the screen and that we can telecast.
I think it's a great idea, yeah.
It's time to start having that conversation again.
Yeah.
Mr. Just as a side point, and again, we might be too late in doing this, but I know that Ms. Kelver over at the Central Appraisal would be very, very happy to give us a breakdown.
I think maybe it's too late for
No, it's
this
too late now.
meeting, but maybe we can talk about having her come in September, because that would probably be a good follow-up for us.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind to take care of that for us, that would be great. Okay, moving on to number 4. I think it's, yeah. Ratification of award amendment number 5 to YISD contract number 201-60323 with WRA Architects. Okay, number 5, ratification of award of change order number 2 to YISD contract number 201-80081 with AO General Contractor, Inc. Number 6, naming of Riverside High School Gymnasium. Number 7, naming of Riverside High School football field. Number 8, naming of Riverside High School baseball field.
Got a lot of naming.
Yeah, a lot of naming.
We're excited about it. It's our 50-year anniversary coming up, so got some good coaches coming up. I was blessed to be coached by 2 of them, and Melinda's baseball. I didn't do baseball, but I got to get them in football, so it's a good one.
Very neat. Okay, we'll go to closed executive meeting. We'll have a board self-evaluation discussion. Number 2, discussion regarding document evaluating performance of administrator. Number 3, discussion with legal counsel regarding status of litigation and options for resolution in Jameson versus ISD cause number 2017 DCV 2616. Number 4, discussion with legal counsel regarding actions and local remedies under contract with VLK Architects for 2015 bond program management. Number 5, discussion with legal counsel regarding actions and legal remedies under contract with Urban Associates for New Bel Air Middle School. And then after the action, after closed session, consider and take possible action regarding options for resolution of litigation in Jameson versus YSD, cause number 2017 DCV 2616. Number 2, possible action regarding contract with Urban Associates for Bel Air Middle School. Number 3, possible action regarding contract with VLK Architects for 2015 bond program management. And that covers everything. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we adjourn.
After that long meeting, my gosh, this is probably one of the longest meetings we've had.